Chapter 1149. The Eagle King's feet suddenly stopped in midair, not moving at all. It was as if he had turned into an eternal statue. Only his head was still slowly turning backwards, looking at his fourth brother who was lying quietly on the ground, in despair and reluctance. "I'm not at ease, fourth brother. Please wake up, I really can't take it anymore." Eagle King begged in despair. His voice was so low that even he himself couldn't hear it. Then, his body suddenly stopped moving. Not a single sound could be heard from him anymore. But his head was still turned, and his eyes were still telling of his anxiety, despair, and helplessness. "Fourth brother, I can't protect you anymore." Eagle King's eyes were filled with sorrow, regret, and anxiety. Just like that, Bear King was still lying there quietly, oblivious to everything around him. He was really too tired. His body had been completely overdrawn beyond the limit. The heavenly tribulation had struck him, and almost all the bones in his body had been removed. In the silence, his spirit seemed to be wandering in the void. There seemed to be something, but he couldn't remember it clearly. He couldn't grasp it, and he couldn't see it clearly. Right now, he just wanted to sleep. He didn't want to think about anything, and he just wanted to sleep. But at this moment, there seemed to be a heart-wrenching voice shouting, "Fourth brother, wake up." It seemed to be ninth brother calling him. It was Eagle King. Bear King's heart jolted. Bear Mountain tried his best to open his eyes, but he couldn't. He continued to try, but his eyelids were as heavy as a mountain. My brother is calling me." Bear Mountain thought anxiously, trying his best to open his eyes, but it was useless. His body was as soft as cotton. "Fourth brother, wake up, wake up. I can't take it anymore." It was Eagle King's voice again. Bear Mountain's spirit was roaring angrily, struggling anxiously. Ninth brother, what happened to you? Ninth brother. Fourth brother is here. Fourth brother will be here soon." Suddenly, the image of the Eagle King miraculously appeared in Bear Mountain's mind. Bear Mountain seemed to have finally opened his eyes. Looking at his bloodied brother in his mind, he suddenly felt a sharp pain in his heart. It was as if his 5 viscera and 6 bowels had been shattered into pieces at this moment. In his mind, the Eagle King looked at him in despair. In an almost inaudible voice, he moved his lips with difficulty. "Fourth brother, wake up." Then, the Eagle King's figure suddenly disappeared. It was even more abrupt than before. Big Bear raised his head to the sky and roared. Then, he suddenly jumped up from the ground. He finally woke up. On the battlefield of blood and fire, the Bear King, who had just passed the lightning tribulation, had actually awoken miraculously. But just as he opened his sleepy eyes, they widened to the limit in an instant, and his eyes looked as if they were going to split open. An indescribable grief and indignation rushed into his heart like a raging wave. In front of him, there was only darkness. An imposing figure, quietly blocking in front of him. Not moving at all. Drip, drip, drip. Sticky blood flowed continuously from this person's body, dripping onto Bear Mountain's body. When he woke up, that roar caused the surrounding strange races to tremble in fear. But this person blocking him, why didn't he move? Why didn't he move? Why didn't he turn his head to look at me? Why did this figure seem so familiar? But my brother doesn't have such a figure. Does he look like ninth brother? A little, but he doesn't have ninth brother's wide wings. And he doesn't have wings, No wings. A terrifying thought suddenly appeared in Bear Mountain's mind. He suddenly felt his heart contract violently. An indescribable heartache suddenly surged up like a mountain and overturning the sea. He carefully stood up, moving step by step to the front of this figure. Suddenly, he felt like he was seeing stars. In that instant, it was as if there were countless huge hammers hammering on his head, hammering on his heart. His body, bones, heart and soul were all smashed into pieces. Ninth brother. Bear Mountain didn't dare to believe his own eyes. He rubbed his eyes and suddenly roared crazily towards the sky. The person in front of him was really ninth brother, the king of the skies, Eagle King. A perfectly round pillar of blood spurted out from his mouth with a puff. Eagle King's badly damaged body was still standing there coldly, his face cold and stern, his eyes fierce and stubborn. His body was still leaning forward slightly, as if he would explode at any moment, and in order to protect his brother, he would make the sharpest and most fatal attack. Ninth brother. Bear Mountain trembled as he stretched out his hands, wanting to hug his brother in front of him. But he didn't dare to, afraid that he would disturb his brother's final peace. Brother! Little eagle! Bear Mountain howled towards the sky, feeling his heart shattering into pieces at this moment. He was older than Eagle King by more than 20 years. He still remembered that when ninth brother was born, he was still a medium-sized bear cub. He squatted in front of the nest, looking at the milky white eagle egg and listening to the pecking sounds coming from it. Then the eggshell suddenly cracked, and a small sharp beak appeared. Then, it was a wet yellow-brown little eagle. Like a little chick, it crawled out, its timid eyes looking curiously at that world. That was ninth brother's first look, his brother for life. When ninth brother gradually grew up and could fly, he gradually advanced, and finally became a ninth-level Shen beast like himself. He climbed to the pinnacle and was able to take human form. What a long time it was, and what a nostalgic period of time it was. All along, among all the brothers, he and Tiger King got along the best. That was because both of them were equally bold and impetuous. As for ninth brother, they had been quarreling with each other since they had yet to transform. They had quarreled for hundreds of years, and they had quarreled for almost half of their lives, even until today, not long ago, they were still quarreling. Bear King's thoughts were like smoke, slowly going back. He still remembered that on the way here, Bear King was sitting on Eagle King's back, and both of them were burning with anxiety. Bear King, smelly little eagle, you're flying so slowly. When will we reach the pillar of heaven's mountains? Eagle King, why don't you fly instead? Damn it, come down. I can fly twice as fast. You and the saber together weigh 2,000 caddies. A bear is a bear. Bear King, why don't I throw this saber down and only bring the sword with me? Eagle King, *T. To be able to bring this saber up, it's definitely a sharp weapon. What nonsense are you spouting before the battle? It's been so many years, and you haven't improved at all. Bear King, I'm your fourth brother, and you fucking scolded me for life. Don't you have a guilty conscience, Eagle King? Guilty my asteriscus. As he thought about it, Bear Mountain's eyes filled with tears. Little eagle, how I wish I could quarrel with you again. His thoughts were flying, and he felt like he was still sitting on Eagle King's back. Eagle King's voice became serious. Fourth brother, this battle is a matter of life and death. You must not be rash. Even if you can't control your temper, you must. Bear King laughed heartily. Ninth brother, I understand. But you must take care of yourself. Don't worry, even if I have to risk my life, I will let you return to Tian Fa safely. *T. Eagle King was furious. Who wants you to risk your life? What kind of demoralizing words are you saying at this time? After saying that, Eagle King said something in a low voice. At that time, the clouds were floating past him, and Bear Mountain was feeling relaxed and happy. He looked around randomly, but he didn't hear what Eagle King said clearly. Now that he thought about it, Big Bear felt as if there was still a sky full of clouds beneath his feet, beside him, and beside his ears. The sound of the wind whistling, and the words that the Eagle King had said that he hadn't heard clearly had suddenly become like a clap of thunder in his ears. Fourth brother, even if I have to risk this life of mine, I will not let you die. Today, Eagle King used his own life to fulfill this vow. Anyone who suffered such a heavy injury would have died long ago. They would have died tens of times, hundreds of times. But Eagle King, this arrogant eagle of Tianfe, held on with all his might, using an unknown source of strength to hold on until Bear King woke up. For no other reason but for my brother. Even if I have to die, I will not allow him to be hurt in front of me. Brother, this is how it is. I would rather die than let you die. I would rather die first than see you get hurt in front of me. This is what it means to be a brother. Bear Mountain's heart was suddenly filled with grief. Ninth brother, it's me who implicated you. I had already made up my mind to ensure your safety, But in the end, it was you who used your own life to protect me. If you go, how can I, your fourth brother, endure it? How can I endure it? When the two of them were together, they quarreled all the time, but Bear King had never really gotten angry. He knew that this was a sign of the deep bond between brothers. Eagle King had never liked to talk much. He had always been very quiet, but towards him, he seemed to have an unspeakable dislike for him. That was because he hated iron for not becoming steel. Those quarrels, if they were not real brothers, who would say that? Sometimes he was indeed too naive, too stupid. Eagle King had always been worried that he would be at a disadvantage. Every time something happened to him, Eagle King would always rush to the front after scolding him, no matter what. No matter who was right or wrong, who was right or wrong. Today, it was still ninth brother, Little Eagle. In order to protect him, right in front of him, he finally shed his last drop of blood. Shed his last drop of blood for him. Even though he had died, his body was still protecting me, still worried about me. There was something sticky on his chest. Bear Mountain grabbed a handful of it, and it was bright red. This was ninth brother's blood. Ninth brother's blood. Bear Mountain's eyes suddenly became extremely ferocious. Ninth brother's blood can't be shed in vain. Definitely can't be shed in vain. Ninth brother, fourth brother. I've let you down. If only I could wake up a moment earlier. Just a moment would be enough. Looking at Eagle King's body full of thousands of holes, even his most important pair of wings was gone, and all around him, there were steel-like feathers. The furthest was actually more than 10 feet away. Bear Mountain suddenly felt that it was difficult to breathe. In order to protect me, ninth brother, what kind of attack did he suffer? Such heavy injuries, it's even worse than death by 1,000 cuts. Ninth brother. Bear King finally let out a pained groan. He used all his heart, all his spirit, and all his blood to spit out these two words that tore at his guts. The Eagle King's body was still standing there indifferently, his eyes still looking around viciously, as if he was warning about something. Bear Mountain choked with sobs, suddenly turning his head to look at the 5 frenzy blade enduring earths not far away. His expression suddenly became calm, so calm that it was terrifying. On his temples, thick veins were throbbing. Chapter 1150. He was like a majestic mountain, moving slowly and stealthily. Because if his footsteps were heavy, he would wake up the slumbering ninth brother. Ninth brother has already worked hard for his entire life, protecting me for his entire life. Now, at this moment, I must let him have a good sleep, a peaceful sleep. I cannot let anyone disturb him. Definitely not. It's you guys who injured my ninth brother? Bear Mountain's voice was low, like a volcano that was about to erupt at any moment. Injured, yes, injured. Ninth brother did not die. He will not die. Big Bear was stubbornly thinking in his heart, if someone dares to add the words death to ninth brother's name, I, your father, will tear them apart alive. No one is an exception. The 5 frenzy blade enduring earths suddenly felt as if their souls were trembling uncontrollably. An unprecedented pressure, as heavy as a mountain, heavily pressed down on their hearts. This feeling was as if an ancient beast had locked onto them. Furthermore, they did not have the slightest ability to break free, and could only allow themselves to be slaughtered. His own life was no longer in his hands. So what if it is? One of the frenzy blade enduring earths wanted to laugh maniacally, but the voice that came out was like a cough. We're enemies, could it be your ancestor? Anyone who dares to injure my brother deserves to die. Damn it. Bear Mountain roared, and his body suddenly spun. With an indescribable speed, he grabbed the strange race's man in his hands and squatted down. Following that, he punched the strange race's man's dantian viciously. With a loud bang, the ferocious fist force entered the male strange race's man's abdomen and rushed out from the female strange race's man's abdomen. It even brought along a chunk of her liver. First, the dantian was destroyed, causing him to lose the chance to turn into a spirit seed. With the dantian destroyed, his Shen cultivation would also be reduced to nothing, But he did not die. Want to die? It's not that easy. Because right now, dying was already a very extravagant thing. The fellow who injured my brother wants to die so easily? How could there be such a cheap thing? Bear King's heart was filled with destruction and brutality. Little Eagle, ninth brother. I will make all of the mutated humans here die with you. Bear Mountain said firmly in his heart. At this moment, Bear King only had one wish in his heart, and that was to avenge his ninth brother. Revenge. That was all. Bear Mountain's huge body flashed strangely once more, and yet another frenzy blade enduring earth landed in his hands. The two blades of this frenzy blade enduring earth slashed towards his vitals, but Bear Mountain didn't seem to see it at all. Pu. The two blades landed accurately on Bear Mountain's body at the same time. The blades cut into his flesh by 3 centimeters, just 3 centimeters, and then they couldn't go any deeper. Big Bear, who had already undergone the baptism of the lightning tribulation, was now a true Saint Venerable expert. The difference between him and this third-level Saint King was far too great. The difference was so great that it could not be calculated. For these two blades to cut into the flesh by 3 centimeters and injure the current Bear Mountain was already not an easy feat. But Bear Mountain's huge palms had already pierced through the two bodies of this frenzy blade enduring earths, smashing his dantian into smithereens. Then, with a casual twist of his hand, his waist bone was broken with a kachich sound, and he tossed the frenzy blade enduring earths to the ground. He was placed side by side with the other frenzy blade enduring earths. Following that, his blood-red eyes stared straight at the 3 frenzy blade enduring earths of the other strange races. His eyes were filled with the joy of revenge. The other 3 frenzy blade enduring earths had long been scared out of their wits. With a sudden howl, they turned around and fled. But their speed was simply too slow in the eyes of the current Bear King. With a loud roar, Bear King's body flashed 5 times, and with a series of banging sounds, another 6 blade scars appeared on Bear Mountain's body. But the other 3 frenzy blade enduring earths were also caught by him, their dantians destroyed, and thrown to the ground where the other 2 frenzy blade enduring earths were. A total of 5 frenzy blade enduring earths were now completely crippled, unable to live even if they wanted to, and unable to die even if they wanted to. After taking down the culprits, Bear Mountain slowly straightened his body and turned around. His eyes were filled with sorrow as he looked at his brothers. He did not dare to turn his head, nor could he bear to turn his head. Thus he turned as slowly as possible. He was even hoping that the situation in front of him was just his 9th brother playing a prank on him. He hoped that if he turned a little slower, the Eagle King would suddenly pounce on him, slap him with his wings, and scold him for being an idiot. If that was the case, Bear King felt that he would definitely faint from happiness. It wouldn't matter even if he died from happiness. 9th brother, as long as you can wake up, 4th brother is willing to let you scold me for being an idiot for the rest of my life. 4th brother is willing to die for you. I'd rather die for you. 10,000 times. As long as you can wake up. Just wake up. Bear King did not know that his thoughts were exactly the same as the Eagle King's. 4th brother, as long as you can wake up, I'm willing to die for you, 10,000 times. No matter how slow he turned, there would still be an end to it. Bear King slowly turned his head and saw that the Eagle King was still standing straight. He only felt a lump in his throat, and suddenly burst into tears. He cried so sadly that he squatted down and held his head tightly with his hands. Then he punched himself in the head again and again. You damned bear! Why did you have to fall at such a critical moment? Why couldn't you hold on a little longer? You really deserve to die. You're the one who deserves to die. You deserve to die the most. Bear Mountain's heart-wrenching cries were extremely unpleasant to hear, but it made everyone who heard them feel as if their organs were being torn apart. The Eagle King's tattered clothes hung on his body, fluttering in the wind. He still stood there coldly, indifferent to everything in the world. He did not even have the slightest reaction to his own brother's heart-wrenching cries. The Eagle of Tian Fa. At this moment, it had already returned to eternity. King! Suddenly, a loud roar resounded in unison, shaking the vast sky. The sky instantly turned dark. Countless iron wings filled the sky, filling up the entire land. Countless black feathers covered the sky like clouds, covering the sun and the moon. Bear Mountain looked back in shock, only to see that the remaining less than 800 Tian-Fa eagle people, regardless of whether they were heavily injured or lightly injured, had all returned to their original forms and flew into the sky. Their eyes were as calm and cold as the Eagle King's, distant and persistent. "What are you bastards trying to do? Are you rebelling?" Bear Mountain roared and stood up. "Come down for me." His voice suddenly choked and he wailed. "Hurry up and come down for this, Daddy." Bear King had already guessed what they were trying to do. Facing the roar of the Beast King, all the eagles were completely unmoved. This was something that was completely impossible before. A black cloud slowly moved in the sky. Although it was messy, it was still densely packed with the outsider's grand formation, slowly moving towards it, with a pressure as vast and heavy as a mountain. Although it was moving very slowly, it was filled with determination. If the king dies, he dies. No matter what, the Eagle of Tian-Fa will always have his brothers and clansmen following him. He will still be the king of the skies. No matter where you go, king, we will follow you. Together in life and death. Eagle 17. Fuck your grandmother. Don't mess around. Hurry up and come down for this, Daddy. Come down. Come down. Bear Mountain screamed madly. He was so anxious that he spat out a mouthful of blood. The leading eagle lowered his head and looked at Bear Mountain. Then, his resolute eyes locked onto his king. Silently and indifferently, he said, "Bear King, don't say any more. This is a matter of the eagle people. The king has fallen. The king has fallen alone. He needs his followers. The king of the eagle people, even if it's the Yellow Springs underworld, he will still have his followers. Once the king, forever the overlord. The pride of the eagle people will not allow their king to go on his journey alone. We want to accompany our king. Whether it's the 9 underworlds or the Yellow Springs, we will still fight side by side." His voice was calm and flat. There was no sorrow, no pain, and no hysteria. It was as if he was talking about something insignificant. Bear Mountain's majestic body trembled helplessly. Looking at the group of eagles in the sky, he suddenly felt a stabbing pain in his heart. Helplessness. It's all because of me. If not for me, 9th brother would not have gone to that place where he could never return. These Eagle People brothers would not have followed their king through life and death. It's all because of me, Bear King cried as he looked at the slowly moving group of eagles in the sky. Suddenly, he roared and knelt down, kowtowing crazily. Brothers, this old bear is begging you, I beg you. Come down too." In the sky, Eagle 17's sharp eyes shone with deep emotions. But he still said resolutely, "Bear King, you are the king of Tian-Fa. Not a single citizen of Tian-Fa can withstand your kowtow. But at this moment, please forgive me for disobeying your orders. The king is waiting for me. I must go. I cannot let the king go on his journey alone. In the Yellow Springs, there will be enemies. How can we let our king go alone? Bastard, there are so many strange races here. And the war for seizing the heavens in the future. And, in any case, you have many responsibilities on your shoulders. You bastard thing. I beg you. Come down. I want to kill you, you bastard. My blood brothers, come down. Bear Mountain kowtowed repeatedly. He didn't even know what he was saying anymore. He begged incoherently and cried in grief. The king of Tian-Fa had never shed a tear in his life, nor had he knelt before anyone. But at this moment, he had made an exception. But he could not win back the hearts of the Eagle people. The king of their race had always been a supreme existence in their hearts. No one could replace him. I'm sorry. The war for seizing the heavens no longer has any meaning to us. The lives of the world are also meaningless to us. We came here for the glory of Tian-Fa, the glory of the Shen beasts. For the sake of following our king, let's fight to our heart's content. Other than that, we have no other requests. Now the king is gone. We naturally have to go as well. The lives of the world, in our eyes, are not even comparable to a single hair of our king. They are not worthy. The pride and arrogance of us eagle people is unparalleled in the world. We only fight for the eagle people, for the eagle king. We want our king to be as proud as ever even in the underworld. Eagle 17 said indifferently. Lord Bear King, all the bear brothers who fought alongside you. We will meet again in our next lives. Let us eagle people once again shine as the tyrants of the skies for our Tion Fa holy land. Chapter 1151. After saying that, Eagle 17 did not say anything else. In fact, he did not even look at the ground. A total of 800 Xian eagles let out a resonant cry at the same time. A long eagle cry pierced through the clouds, straight into the 9 heavens. Following that, 800 Xian eagles raised their heads and let out a long cry. In the midst of the raging winds and clouds, Eagle 17, who was at the front, suddenly raised his head and flew high into the sky. His posture was proud and resolute. 800 Xian eagles followed behind him, piercing through the clouds. When they reached their peak, the group of Xian eagles in the sky had already become a small black. Eagle 17 suddenly stopped rising. Following that, he pierced through the clouds with a shrill cry, his body shining with a golden light as he dove down. King, I'm coming. How can you not bring me along when you go? We said before that we will follow you for generations to come. The cry of the 9 heavens, the blood of the Xian eagle, the soul of the Xian eagle. This was the forbidden move of the eagle people. Every time it was used, it required the combined strength of over 100 peak level 9 Xian eagles. The moment it was used, it would mean that they would perish together with the enemy. The power of this move naturally far exceeded the self-destruction of ordinary Xian beasts. This was also the only way for the Eagle King's guards to send off their own king. Only the greatest king of the Eagle people could receive such treatment from the Eagle people. Before this, such a thing had only happened once in the last 10,000 years. That time was 8,000 years ago. No! Bear Mountain screamed in despair, his entire body trembling. At this moment, the one who wanted to die the most was him. The one who wanted to die with his brothers the most was him. But he could not die yet. The mission of this trip had not been completed yet. Behind him, there were still over 1,000 bear brothers looking at him. Bear Mountain believed that as long as he died, these 1,000 bear warriors would also follow him like these Xian eagles. As for the war for seizing the heavens, or the lives of the continent, they did not care. This was the absolute loyalty of a tribe. Only among Xian beasts would such a thing happen. So reckless, so proud, and so infatuated. Therefore, Bear Mountain could not die. At least not now. But his teeth had already bitten through his lower lip. Fresh blood gushed out. Her eyes were misty with tears. His heart had already been broken into pieces. He knelt on the ground, his hands clutching the ground tightly. His entire body was convulsing and trembling. Suddenly, he bent down, opened his mouth, and bit a large lump of bloody soil on the ground. He choked with sobs, and endless hot tears flowed down his cheeks. My king is mighty. Eternal Tion Fa. Following behind Eagle 17 was a group of black eagles, their bodies glowing with a golden light as they swooped down without hesitation. His flying posture was still arrogant and confident, stable and calm. Their formation was still neat. Although the king was no longer here, Wang Meng could not be embarrassed. Even in death, they had to be neat and tidy. That way, when he reached the other world, he would be able to immediately form a powerful fighting force. Fight for the king. 10 to a group, they still followed the formation that the king had arranged for them. They swooped down in different directions, but they would definitely land in the densest area of the strange races. Facing such a suicidal attack from high up in the sky, no one could dodge it. Extremely violent explosions rang out one after another. It far exceeded any of the previous self-detonations. Such a horrifying way of attack shook the world. The world was turned upside down, and the earth was shaking. In the sky, there were still countless golden figures, resolutely rushing down from the highest point. Silently, with their loyalty to their king, they rushed into the dense crowd of non-humankind beings and launched the most terrifying, most violent explosive attack. The Eagle people had officially used such a unique and heroic method to send off their king, using their own lives to compose a song of eternal loyalty that would be followed forever. The lives of tens of thousands of strange races. They were the sacrifices to send off the eternal king of the sky. The Eagle King's majestic body still stood proudly, emotionless, his expression cold. Although his eyes were dim and lifeless, they were still as sharp as ever. As though he had seen through the endless void in front of him, opening up a wide path for his brothers. The earth-shattering explosions finally came to an end. From the center of the explosion, there was not a single person in a radius of several thousand zhang. There was only nothingness left. In this unprecedentedly intense series of explosions, at least 50,000 strange races had been completely turned into ashes. 9 Heavens Eagle cries absolute jade blood, burning the heavens and destroying the Earth Eagle soul. This ultimate forbidden technique that had been passed down for tens of thousands of years, its power was truly shocking and terrifying. Yes, 800 Black Eagles had used their own bodies to compose a heroic song of eternal loyalty. Even if they were to die, even if they had decided to self-detonate, they were still afraid of harming the Bear brothers who had fought alongside them, so they had chosen to stand further away. Their explosions had actually split the entire battlefield into two. Only the two ends were left. Regardless of life or death, the only thing they could not let go of was still their brothers. Brothers who had also originated from Tian Fa. A patch of blood suddenly appeared in the sky, slowly forming into a blood-red eagle. It soared into the sky, disappearing calmly into the clouds. Under such a terrifying attack, the number of the strange race's troops that managed to survive by luck numbered less than 10,000. And all of them had lost all their will to fight. The remaining bear warriors were more than enough to deal with them. The previously ferocious strange race's army, which had the absolute advantage in numbers, had already been turned into scorched earth. So the Eagle people were very at ease as they went. They were very at ease as they continued to accompany their king, galloping forward, soaring through the skies, looking down on everything. Take revenge for the Eagle people brothers. Take revenge for the Eagle people brothers. Take revenge for the Eagle people brothers. For all the Eagle tribe brothers who had sacrificed themselves. Everyone. In the distance, the bear warriors charged wildly, all of them with tears streaming down their faces as they chased after the remaining strange races. The outcome was already decided, but they would not let any of their enemies go. All the Tian Fa warriors were extremely violent and crazed. The remaining less than 10,000 strange races soldiers were all scared out of their wits, fleeing in all directions. The enemies in front had all been annihilated by the bear warriors, unable to escape the fate of annihilation. The few thousand strange races soldiers on the other side were a little luckier. After all, the distance between the two sides was rather far, and they were lucky enough to retreat into the strange races' continents, too terrifying. This was a nightmare. These Tian Fa warriors were even scarier than the rumors, even scarier than nightmares. Bear Mountain Shan slowly crawled to his feet, looking at the Eagle King's unfalling body in a daze, looking at his good brother who had accompanied him his entire life. Suddenly, tears streamed down his face. With tears streaming down his face, he staggered over, carefully hugging the Eagle King's broken body tightly into his embrace, as if afraid of hurting his little brother. Although the Eagle King no longer felt anything. Little Eagle, wait for me, fourth brother will bring you home, bring you back to Tian. Bear Mountain Shan carefully and cautiously carried the Eagle King up and laid him flat. Stroking the Eagle King's cold face tenderly, he said in a low voice, "Little Eagle, I've captured all those strange races soldiers who harmed you. How do you want to deal with them?" He tilted his head as if he was still talking to his brother. As if he had heard something, he nodded and said, "And I know. With your habits, the habits of the Eagle people, you will definitely tear them apart alive. I understand. Little Eagle, fourth brother will help you vent your anger and take revenge for you." Bear Mountain Shan smiled pitifully, standing up slowly. Turning his head, he glared fiercely at one of the strange race's soldiers. With a wave of his hand, a strong suction force pulled this trembling frenzy blade enduring earth over. With one hand holding his body in place, the other hand slowly reached out and pinched his finger. Exerting a little force, he slowly pulled his finger out, and finally, pulled it off. The strange race's soldiers' wretched cries were so shrill that they didn't sound like a human's voice. It was earth-shattering. His Xian cultivation had already been crippled, and facing Bear Mountain Shan's cruel torture, he had no way to resist. Even death was a luxury, and he couldn't faint even if he wanted to. Because the moment he fainted, Bear Mountain would send a wave of Xian Qi to stimulate his nerves, waking him up immediately. This was to ensure that he could maintain his consciousness throughout the entire process. Only wretched cries and curses could be heard one after another. Bear Mountain Shan was unmoved. He stretched out his hand and grabbed another finger, slowly pulling it tight. With a reminiscing smile, he said, "Little Eagle, once, when we were secretly drinking the Monkey King's wine, you once said, when would we be able to reach the peak?" He laughed, tearing off the strange race's soldier's finger amidst the wretched cries. He said to the Eagle King, "Do you still remember when I said that one day we would all be able to reach the peak?" Then you laughed. "Do you still remember that time because you stole wine, your head was scratched by the Monkey King's mount, and your face was disfigured? It was so embarrassing." An eagle's face was disfigured by a monkey cub. He laughed happily as he reminisced, as if the Eagle King was still sitting in front of him, accompanying him to drink the monkey wine that he had stolen. Blood flowed from his head, but he was in high spirits. Just like that, he recalled all the bits and pieces of the past. Bit by bit, right in front of the Eagle King, he tore apart the 5 frenzy blade enduring earths that had harmed the Eagle King, piece by piece. After that, he shifted his body and sat beside the Eagle King, saying in a low voice, "Little Eagle, Big Brother has already avenged you, but why haven't you woken up yet? Why haven't you woken up yet? Fourth brother will not quarrel with you anymore, you can scold me all you want, alright? Quickly sit up, quickly get up, Little Eagle. Little Eagle, wake up, fourth brother will not snatch anything from you in the future. You can drink the monkey wine first, brother-in-law's wine, fourth brother will give it all to you. Get up, quickly get up. All of a sudden, Bear Mountain fell to the ground, crying bitterly. "What do you want me to do for you to wake up? Say it, say it, say it. I've agreed to everything, why aren't you getting up yet?" A few Bear Tribe warriors walked over with tears all over their faces, saying sorrowfully, "King, please restrain your grief. Lord Eagle King has already passed for thousands of years. King, please restrain your grief." These words were spoken with a thick nasal tone, and as they spoke, their own tears also began to fall. Bear Mountain suddenly flew into a rage, jumping up and kicking the Bear Tribe warrior to the ground, shouting crazily, "Your mother's fart. What nonsense did you say just now? What already passed for thousands of years? Bastard! My brother is not dead. My brother is not dead. He is not dead. My brother will not die no matter what." Bear Mountain roared. Tears of blood flowed out. Then he roared again, "He will never die." Then he suddenly spat out a mouthful of bright red blood, and his sturdy body suddenly fell to the ground. Chapter 1152. In the distant skies, there were 2 white figures speeding through the skies like shooting stars. Just now, for some reason, Mei Xuan suddenly felt uneasy, unable to calm down. Ever since Bear King, Eagle King, and the other 8 Saint Venerables set off, Mei Xuan's heart had never been at ease. It was just that when Jun Moxie set off with her, he had sent Mei Xuan into the world of the Hongjun Pagoda, cutting off all information. Mei Xuan also knew the severity of this matter, so she calmed herself down in the Hongjun Pagoda. She had to ensure that she was in her best condition to deal with all the things that might happen in the future. Later on, they coincidentally met with the experts of Heaven's Saint Palace surrounding Zhan Luan Hui, and the 2 of them joined in the battle. Mei Xuan did not make an official appearance in this battle, but her assistance to Jun Moxie was definitely not inferior to Gu Han's. In fact, she even surpassed him. Because she was so focused on this battle, her heart was as calm as still water. But after the battle had just ended, he actually didn't have the slightest bit of delight from defeating such a peerless expert. Instead, he felt waves of panic in his heart. Moreover, the bad feeling actually grew stronger and stronger. He only felt his heart palpitate with fear, and his thoughts were chaotic and clueless to the extreme. After separating from Heaven Saint Palace's Gu Han and the rest, they went to search for the remnants of the 3 Holy Lands. And Mei Shuiyan immediately urged Jun Moxie to hurry, flying towards the Pillar of Heaven's mountains as if her life depended on it. There was almost no delay, to the point where Jun Moxie did not even have the time to take a sip of water and catch his breath, flying over just like that. The area occupied by the Pillar of Sky Mountains was simply too vast. The huge ruins were already in sight from afar. For some reason, the closer they got to the Pillar of Heaven's mountains, the more anxious Mei Shuiyan became. There was an indescribable sense of sorrow and pain, as if she was extremely anxious but extremely timid, not daring to enter that area. This was a very subtle psychology. Even Mei Shuiyan herself didn't know what was going on. There were clearly many of his brothers and elders waiting for him to rush to the rescue, but he could faintly feel that there was also endless sorrow waiting for him to go there, waiting to give him a heavy blow. As they got closer and closer to their destination, Mei Shuiyan's body strangely felt weak, and it seemed like she could no longer fly. "What's wrong?" Jun Moxie looked at her in surprise. Mei Shuiyan's usually jade-like face was frighteningly pale at this moment, without the slightest trace of blood. Her lips were also trembling. Could it be that she had expended too much energy fighting Zhan Luanhui? However, that shouldn't be the case. "My body is fine, but my heart feels terrible. I don't know what's going on." Mei Shuiyan composed herself and shook her head. She frowned. "I actually have an ominous feeling. Am I worrying for nothing?" The usually calm and composed Mei Shuiyan suddenly asked this question. Clearly, she hoped that Jun Moxie could give her a definite answer, a show of support from his lover. Jun Moxie sucked in a deep breath and said, "This kind of illusory feeling, how can it be accurate?" Actually, when Jun Moxie said this, his heart also skipped a beat. Similar to the ominous feeling that Mei Shuiyan had, he had also felt it the moment he entered the Pillar of Heaven's mountains. But he didn't say it out loud, fearing that Mei Shuiyan would be too worried. This was a kind of telepathy, and also an intuition towards danger that had been honed by an assassin. Once this feeling appeared, something was definitely going to happen. Jun Moxie was almost certain that something big must have happened on the side of the Eagle Bear Coalition army. Right now, he was burning with anxiety. But in front of Mei Shuiyan, he didn't dare to show it, not even a little bit. He believed that if he showed that kind of anxiety, before they even reached their destination, Mei Shuiyan would probably break down first. Eagle King, Bear King, the 8 great Saint Masters. Who were they? They were the closest people to Mei Shuiyan. Especially Eagle King, Bear King, who was Mei Shuiyan's brother for so many years. This kind of relationship was even closer than blood brothers. It was even more than blood brothers. If something really happened to them, it would definitely be a devastating blow to Mei Shuiyan. As a man, his woman's support, although Jun Moxie's heart was in turmoil, on the surface, he still had to act as if nothing had happened. He still had to do everything he could to comfort Mei Shuiyan. This was also a man's responsibility. But facing Mei Shuiyan's sudden question, Jun Moxie knew that he couldn't give his lover too much hope. Otherwise, it would only cause her more burden in the future. It was better to let her suffer for a while, than to let her suffer for a lifetime. "Shuiyan, your current condition is not ideal. It's better for you to enter the pagoda and recover. Let me fly you," Jun Moxie suggested cautiously. If Mei Shuiyan agreed to enter, then it would be easier. The Hongjun Pagoda could isolate all the outside world. If something bad really happened, Mei Shuiyan wouldn't be there, so the impact on her would not be as direct. If she told her in the future, it would be much more diluted. This was the best way to compromise. "No." Mei Shuiyan rejected firmly. "I want to see my brothers. I want my brothers from Tian Fa to be able to see me at the first glance. I am their big sister. No matter what happens, I will bear it for them." After saying that, she gritted her teeth and increased her speed. This speed had already surpassed her usual fastest speed. Jun Moxie sighed and followed behind her silently. Although he knew that Mei Shuiyan's actions would only hurt herself, he couldn't stop her. But in his heart, he thought to himself, yes, no matter what happens, you, as their big sister, can bear it for them and help them share their burden. But in this world, there are always some things that no one can bear. Not even you. There were some things that had to be faced that couldn't be avoided, nor could they be avoided. Right now, Jun Moxie could only pray silently, hoping that this blow would not be too heavy. Or perhaps it was not too pessimistic. After all, there were volcanoes erupting all around them. The chances of the strange races coming over at this time was not very high. Even the evil monarch, Jun Moxie, could only console himself like this. The two of them increased their speed at the same time. They were clearly still quite a distance away from their destination, but they could already smell the thick stench of blood. One had to know that the wind right now was a level 9 hurricane. Moreover, the two of them were in the limelight, practically riding the wind. But even though they were so far away from the battlefield and the wind was against them, they could still smell the thick stench of blood. Mei Shuiyan's face turned even paler. She bit her lips and flew forward with all her might. Suddenly, her figure froze in the sky. Her eyes were filled with panic and helplessness. She cried out shrilly, "Little eagle!" Her eyes stared blankly at a certain spot in the sky in front of her. Jun Moxie looked over, and his eyes narrowed. He couldn't help but feel a chill in his heart. There was a ball of blood mist there, and it slowly soared into the sky before condensing into the shape of a matchlessly enormous eagle that blotted out the heavens and the earth. It had iron wings, a sharp beak, sharp claws, and golden eyes, and it carried a proud and aloof aura that looked down upon all living beings as it flew towards the horizon without the slightest reluctance to leave. In the blink of an eye, it had completely disappeared into the clouds. Mei Shuin raised her head and looked blankly at the huge eagle disappearing. Suddenly, she let out a heart-wrenching scream, and her body trembled. She staggered in the air and almost fell down. But she quickly steadied herself and shot forward like an arrow, flying with all her might. The speed of her movement was unimaginably fast, indescribably fast. Jun Moxie's face instantly turned green. A blood-red color suddenly appeared in his eyes. Eagle King. Did he go? His body flashed, and he used the yin-yang escape to catch up. The intense battle on the huge battlefield had already ended. Silence. The ground was covered in smoke. Broken limbs and broken bodies stretched as far as the eye could see. Countless heads had already rolled off their necks, rolling in the wind. Their eyes were still wide open in anger. The thick stench of blood in the air was almost suffocating. This was no longer an ordinary battlefield. It was more like a battle between gods and demons, causing the destruction of the world. There were less than 1,000 bear warriors left. They formed a large circle and knelt down silently towards the center of the circle. They were protecting the king of their tribe who had fallen into a coma due to excessive heartache. They were also paying the most respectful and sincere respects to the king of the eagle people who had already sacrificed himself. No one cried out and no one cried. The battlefield was filled with blood mist, but it was deathly silent. It was like a hell filled with blood. But this kind of indescribable silence made it hard for one to breathe. This kind of extremely oppressive and sorrowful atmosphere seemed to be able to crush one's heart. A mournful cry pierced through the air. All the bear warriors raised their heads in unison, looking in the direction of the cry. Their eyes were filled with agitation. That was Big Sister's voice. Big Sister is here. A white figure flashed, and Mei Shuin fell from the sky like a meteor. The powerful impact caused the large rocks on the ground to fly into the air. When she landed, even with Mei Shuian's cultivation, she still staggered a few steps. But she did not hesitate at all. She sprinted towards the center of the circle formed by the bear warriors. She ran too quickly. Even the scarf that she had tied up her hair had been blown away by the wind. Her beautiful long hair fluttered in the wind, but she did not notice it at all. When she reached the front of the circle formed by the crowd, She suddenly stopped in her tracks. She suddenly stopped. There was no other reason. It was afraid. Afraid that she would really see something that she did not wish to see. The bear warriors looked at her silently. The usually slow bear warriors suddenly understood what Mei Shuiyan was thinking at this moment. All the warriors' eyes slowly filled with tears, and they remained silent. Mei Shuiyan's heart also fell into a bottomless abyss, sinking and sinking. Chapter 1153. All the bear tribe warriors knelt neatly and raised their heads to look at Mei Shuiyan. No one answered. All of them lowered their heads at the same time. Some of them were already sobbing uncontrollably. There were a total of 6,000 brothers. Why are there only a few of you left? Tell me, where are the others? Have they gone to search for traces of the enemy? Mei Shuiyan looked at these wounded brothers in a daze. She mumbled a reason that even she herself did not believe. Still, no one answered. Mei Shuiyan suddenly yelled in an extremely shrill voice. Why aren't you answering me? Where are the other brothers? Where did they go? Where's Eagle King? Where's Bear King? Where the hell did you two bastards go? Say something. Answer me. Right now, Mei Shuiyan no longer had any of her usual composure. She no longer had the demeanor of a Tian Fa empress. She was on the verge of breaking down in hysteria. A figure flashed. Jun Moxie landed beside Mei Shuiyan with an ashen face. The warriors remained silent, but they finally opened up a path in unison. Jun Moxie moved again and stood in front of Mei Shuiyan, blocking her line of sight. He stared fixedly at Mei Shuiyan and said with a trembling voice, Shui Yen, get out of the way. Mei Shuiyan raised her head angrily. Her originally beautiful eyes looked like they were about to spit fire. Jun Moxie, get out of the way. Seeing that Jun Moxie was still looking at her pitifully and had no intention of moving, Mei Shuiyan was completely enraged. She roared, get out of the way. Her voice actually changed in pitch. The usually gentle, steady, and magnanimous Mei Shuiyan actually looked like she was about to start a fight at the slightest disagreement. I want to go see my brothers. No one could stop him. Jun Moxie sighed sadly and lowered his head, but he still didn't move. If Shui Yen can vent on me, then let her vent on me. Mei Shuiyan was stunned for a moment. Her body suddenly moved, and she quickly passed by Jun Moxie. Immediately, a heartbroken cry came from behind Jun Moxie. Mei Shuiyan raised her head to the sky and roared. Her aura suddenly spread out from her body. Her voice was like the cry of an ape or the cry of a cuckoo, hollow and distant. Everyone who heard her voice was infected by the sorrow in her heart. Even if he didn't know what had happened, he could clearly feel what it felt like to have his heart broken. In the center of the circle, Eagle King's broken body lay quietly on the ground. Beside him, Bear King was covered in blood. His mouth was also stained with scarlet blood as he lay next to him. The only difference was that Eagle King's body didn't have any signs of life. And Bear King was still breathing weakly. Mei Shuiyan's tragic cry caused Bear Mountain, who was in a semi-conscious state due to extreme sorrow, to suddenly wake up. The moment he woke up, he suddenly spat out a mouthful of blood. He jumped up and looked around frantically. Big sister is here. Quick, save little eagle. Save little eagle. He spoke incoherently and frantically begged for help. Mei Shuiyan was right in front of him, but he acted as if he didn't see her. Little eagle. Mei Shuiyan's delicate body trembled violently as if she was struck by lightning. Sparkling and translucent tears slowly flowed down her cheeks and dripped onto the ground. She walked over slowly and gently. Her movements were unusually gentle and slow, as if she was afraid to disturb her little brother's deep sleep. Step by step, it was only a few steps, but Mei Shuiyan seemed to have used up all her strength. Finally, she reached Eagle King's side. She slowly bent down and touched Eagle King's cold but proud face with her trembling fingers. She murmured, Little eagle, big sister is here. Big sister is here to see you. Don't be afraid. Big sister is here. Don't be afraid. Mei Shuiyan reached out and slowly hugged Eagle King's cold body in her arms. She hugged him tightly and said, Little brother, why are you always so naughty? The ground is so cold and dirty. Don't you feel uncomfortable lying here? Quick, get up. Big sister will hug you. Her snow-white dress was instantly stained with blood. Eagle King's body grew bigger. Mei Xuan hugged him in her arms, but her legs were still dangling on the ground. She walked slowly with Eagle King in her arms as if she was sleepwalking. Little eagle, brother. Big sister will bring you home, bring you home. Don't be afraid, be good. She suddenly staggered, but she stubbornly stood up straight, trying her best to maintain the stability of the body in her arms. Her face was flushed red and she spat out a mouthful of blood. Just as she was about to take a step forward, her legs gave out and she fell to her knees. Her eyes closed and she fainted. Although Mei Xuan had fainted, her hands were still hugging her brother's body tightly, refusing to let go. As the saying goes, a sister-in-law is like a mother. In the Tian Fa family, as the big sister, Mei Xuan's role was similar to that of the other Beast King's mother. In fact, she was even more important. These brothers were all younger than Mei Xuan. They had been led by Mei Xuan since they were young, growing up step by step. It was unknown how much effort Mei Xuan had put into her. From a fledgling to a king of the skies, an overlord of a generation, Mei Xuan could be said to have witnessed their entire lives. Every time they fell, it was Mei Xuan who would help them up. Every time they succeeded, it was Mei Xuan who shared their joy. Every achievement came from Mei Xuan's teachings. And every time these brothers had something sad or happy, the first person they would think of to talk to was this big sister. And now, Eagle King was lying coldly in Mei Xuan's arms. Facing the big sister that he respected and loved the most, he could no longer hear it. Mei Xuan felt as if her heart was being torn apart. He had been smashed into pieces while still alive, dripping with blood. After a long time, Mei Xuan woke up and realized that she was leaning on Jun Moxie. Jun Moxie's deep eyes were looking at her warmly. They were filled with love, pain, and killing intent. Big sister, big sister. Bear Mountain cried and pounced in front of Mei Xuan. He suddenly kowtowed crazily. Big sister, kill me, I don't want to live anymore, I really don't want to live anymore. Little eagle, ninth brother, they all died to save me. I didn't protect ninth brother well and even dragged little ninth down. I deserve to die. I'm the one who deserves to die. Why didn't I die? Bear King's body twitched and he suddenly knelt down. He slapped his own face. I'll beat you to death, I'll beat you to death. You damn bear, you killed my ninth brother, my ninth brother? He slapped so hard that in just a few times, the bear's head was already a bloody mess. Mei Xuan looked at the sky blankly. After a long time, she finally lowered her head and her eyes started to focus again. She looked lovingly at Eagle King in her arms and couldn't help but shed hot tears. Then she raised her head and looked at Bear King. Her voice was trembling, but it was unusually firm. Stand up. Bear Mountain cried, as if he had no bones in his body. A man bleeds but not tears. Stand up. Be a man and stand up. Bear Mountain, don't make me look down on you again. Mei Xuan's tears flowed down her face quietly, but her voice was calm. Just now, you said that ninth brother died because he saved you. Then, I don't want ninth brother to save a good-for-nothing like you. If that happens, I will feel sorry for him. Mei Xuan's eyes suddenly opened wide and she shouted, Bear Mountain, stand up. This strict order actually caused the ground beneath everyone's feet to tremble. Bear Mountain's body trembled. He jumped up and stood up straight. Mei Xuan's eyes were red. She looked at him fiercely and said in a low voice, Ninth brother is dead. He died to save you. What will you do? Tell me. Bear Mountain gritted his teeth and said without hesitation, If I die in this battle, I will definitely reunite with ninth brother. But even if I survive, I will find ninth brother after the battle. But even if I am lucky enough to survive, I will look for ninth brother after the battle. Even if I die in the underworld, I, Bear Mountain, will still be ninth brother's fourth brother. I will always be. Bang. Mei Xuan was so angry that her whole body was trembling. First, she gave Big Bear a heavy slap on the face, causing him to spin around in a circle. But that was not enough to vent her anger, so she gave Big Bear a vicious kick on his chest. Then, Big Bear's sturdy body flew out as if he was riding on a cloud and fell heavily to the ground. Very good. Very good. Bear Mountain, good job. Good job. Mei Xuan was so angry that her voice was shaking. She nodded and said, "Ninth brother risked his life to save you. So, he wanted you to kill yourself to accompany him. Hee hee, Bear Mountain, good job. Good job. What a deep brotherly bond. I admire you." Every time she said a sentence, she would kick Bear Mountain. She hit him so hard that he was rolling on the ground. Blood kept coming out of his mouth. But Mei Xuan did not stop. Every punch landed on flesh and there was no mercy. Even Zhu Nemoxie was taken aback. He had never seen Mei Xuan throw such a tantrum before. But Zhu Nemoxie could not stop her, and he could not even try to persuade her to calm down. Finally, Mei Xuan grabbed Big Bear's chest and threw him to the ground. Then, she dragged him to the front of Eagle King as if she was dragging a dead dog. She abruptly let go of him and said sternly with a pale face, "Ask Little Eagle. Ask Ninth Brother. Why did he save you? Why did he risk his life to save you? Bear Mountain, your life was exchanged with Ninth Brother's. Ask him if he is willing to die. Is your life still yours? Do you have the right to decide?" Big Bear looked at Eagle King's face and suddenly let out a muffled cry. Then he froze. "If you think that you are worthy of Ninth Brother, you can die now." Mei Xuan looked at him and said, "I will not stop you." After saying that, he threw a large saber in front of Bear King. Chapter 1154. Go to hell. Go to hell. Go to hell. Why aren't you dead yet? Mei Xuan Lengleng looked at him, tears gushing out of her eyes. Her body trembled, but she said resolutely, "Why aren't you dead yet? Don't you have the guts? You want me to send you off? No problem, just say the word. I don't want a bastard brother like you." This time, Jun Moxie was a little anxious. Shui Yan's words were a little too much. Bear Mountain was a straightforward person. For his brother, he would die just like that. What if he couldn't turn the corner? "I'm not going to die." Big Bear suddenly calmed down and slowly stood up. He stood up slowly and his eyes became calm. "You don't want to die?" Mei Xuan looked at him. Lengleng said, "You don't want to die now? Are you thinking of doing something during the battle? Are you going to die to save Crane King? Then Crane King will die to save Tiger King. Tiger King will die to... Then the last one will die to save me and I will kill myself. Then we will all die? It will be great to reunite in the netherworld. Don't you want that?" Bear Mountain's body trembled. He looked at Mei Xuan pleadingly and said, "Big sister, please don't say that. I feel terrible. I feel terrible, please don't say any more." Yes, Bear King's thoughts were exposed by Mei Xuan. Of course, he didn't want everyone to die, but he already had the will to die. The moment Eagle King died to save Bear King, Bear Mountain already had nothing to live for. At that moment, he really didn't want to live anymore. But at that time, he couldn't die. Moreover, Bear King couldn't stop worrying about his brother. Therefore, he decided that he would fight even harder in the upcoming battle. He would try his best to protect his brother's survival at all costs. Just like what Eagle King did for him. Then, if he could die to save his brother, then he could die in peace. The sworn brotherhood of the Tian Fa King brothers was not in vain. However, after hearing Mei Xuan's words, Bear Mountain felt his blood run cold from the bottom of his heart. Fear and panic rose in his heart. Indeed, the Eagle King had died to save him today, and he was heartbroken to this extent. Then, if he were to die for the sake of his other brothers in the future, wouldn't they be in the same situation as he was now, living a life worse than death? Putting oneself in someone else's shoes, everyone was the same. Could it be that, like what Big Sister said, everyone had to die? Reunite in the Yellow Springs? No, I don't want to do this. I can't do this. But, if his brother was in danger, could he just stand by and do nothing? I can't do it. How could he do that? For a moment, Bear King's heart was in a mess, and he couldn't even speak. Between brothers, there is nothing that needs to be exchanged. June Moxie said quietly. The Eagle King sacrificed himself for you. His intention was definitely not for you to repay him with your body. Could it be that in your heart, isn't sacrificing for other brothers something that you should do? Should. Do you understand? This is how brothers should be. He's your brother, and he should do anything for you. Conversely, for your brother, it is natural to do anything. June Moxie said, pain is unavoidable. But the Eagle King protected you. Even if he died, he was happy. What you really need to do is not to die for your brothers, but to live for them, to do more things for them. If one day you die to save your brother, although we will be sad, we will also be happy for you. Because you will die bravely and with peace of mind. With peace of mind. Just like little Eagle now. June Moxie said solemnly. We must let our brothers live happily and proudly because of us. Even if our brothers have passed away, we must let our brothers smile in the yellow springs. Yes, we should. For my brothers, I am willing to do anything. I am not afraid of death. But I'm afraid that brother will be disappointed. Big Bear turned his head desolately and looked at Eagle King. But Old Ninth has already passed away. Old Nine did not pass away. Our brothers will always remain in our hearts. June Moxie took a deep breath. Until the day you die of old age, your brothers, whether it is the Eagle King, your sister, me, or the other brothers who are not here, will always be with you. Even if they have passed away, their hearts still exist. They will always be with you. As long as you are here, and your heart is still here, our brothers will always be here. I understand. Bear King could not help but wipe his tears. He choked. I am here and my heart is still here. Our brothers will always be here. Little Eagle will always be here. That's right. So you must live on for the Eagle King, for your brothers. Because before he died, his greatest wish was for you to live on. He just wants you to live on. June Moxie said, you cannot let him down. Because he is your brother. Also, the legacy of the Eagle people needs your support. You cannot die. If you really die like a coward, you will be letting down Little Nine. Bear Mountain Peak was silent. But his originally dull eyes finally gained some life. One more thing. Our brother's blood cannot be shed in vain. If others make us bleed, we will make them die. June Moxie said fiercely, Old Bear, you must be prepared. We will get back at you with interest, and we will make you pay. How can our brother's blood be shed in vain? No matter what, we will not. Let those perverted bastards go extinct. Bear Mountain Peak's eyes lit up with deep hatred. Then he suddenly turned around and limped around. He searched bit by bit, collecting the scattered flesh and feathers of the Eagle King. He was so attentive, careful and serious. And Mei Xuan was also doing the same thing. The surrounding bear warriors were also searching silently. They wanted to restore the bodies of their brothers who had already gone far away, so that their brothers could complete their final journey in this world with dignity. Finally, the collection was complete. Mei Xuan plucked out a strand of her hair. Then she asked June Moxie to use the power of metal to forge a needle. She carefully threaded the needle and stitched up the feathers and flesh for her brother. She was so focused, and her movements were so gentle and familiar. Just like that time, when the Eagle King had transformed for the first time and put on his clothes, but accidentally tore his new clothes. She used a needle and thread to stitch him up. She could still vaguely remember the pained expression on the little eagle's face. She even reached out to pinch his hooked nose to tease him. Now, it was still the same situation. But her mood was so heavy and sad, as she stitched up, Mei Xuan asked in a low voice, that blood eagle that appeared in the sky just now, was it the forbidden ultimate move of the Eagle people, 9 heavens eagle cry jade blood, burning heaven and earth mysterious eagle soul? Bear Mountain Peak sniffled and nodded heavily. Then, what about the 8 seniors? Bear Mountain Peak turned his head and did not say a word. His tears flowed like a fountain. At this moment, that huge body was like a fallen leaf in the wind. Then, body? Mei Xuan's heart sank. She asked with a tiny bit of hope, and even a little bit of pleading. Exploded, all exploded? Bear Mountain Peak answered with a thick nasal voice. He squatted down and hugged his head tightly with both hands, trying to suppress his sobs. Mei Shuiyan's hands trembled. She stopped her movements and looked up to the sky. After a long silence, she lowered her head and continued with her work. Although she did not make a sound, her tears still flowed down her cheeks, quietly dripping onto Eagle King's ice-cold body. Mei Shuiyan was obviously numb from the heartache. Her hands were moving mechanically. She could not think of anything. She could not bear to think anymore. She did not dare to think anymore. Her long hair hung down and covered her face. It also covered her thick sorrow that was like a mountain. Alone. Jun Moxie heaved a long sigh. He stood up with his hands clasped behind his back. As smart as he was, he did not know how to console her. The wind blew for tens of thousands of miles. Jun Moxie's clothes and hair were all fluttering in the wind. But in his heart he felt an indescribable pain and desolation. Brothers. In this world he only recognized a few brothers. Now one of them had died in front of him. In the future, would there be more? Although Mei Shuiyan had woken up soon, Jun Moxie knew clearly that Mei Shuiyan's heart was already broken. A beauty's heart was already broken. At this moment, Mei Shuiyan was only forcibly controlling herself. As the Emperor of Tian, she did not have the right to lose her composure in front of her subordinates. No matter what happened, she had to be calm. Only then could she give her subordinates confidence. Previously, when she vomited blood and fainted from grief, the psychological pressure on the soldiers was already very great. Right now, Mei Shuiyan could not afford to lose her composure. If she wanted to cry, she could only wait until it was late at night and cry quietly by herself. But when she woke up tomorrow, she would still be the Emperor of Tianfe. Domineering, heroic, and domineering. Jun Moxie's heart was also very pained. So pained that he almost suffocated. He had always cherished every single brother of Tianfe. Not just the Beast King brothers of Tianfe, even the ordinary Xian beasts were much more cordial to Jun Moxie than to humans. Simple Xian beasts with hearts of innocence were definitely more worth befriending than normal humans. Eagle King's death caused Jun Moxie's vision to darken and his liver to break. But Mei Shuiyan had already fainted. Jun Moxie knew that he could not lose his composure in the slightest. If the two of them grieved too much at the same time, it could be imagined that the Bear Tribe soldiers would definitely fall into chaos, and the situation would completely go out of control. If that was the case, it would truly be terrible. Even if they could salvage the situation afterwards, the morale of the soldiers would definitely be shaken. If they fought with such a mentality, these soldiers would face the danger of being completely annihilated at any time. Because the weakness of a king would make them unable to see the slightest hope of victory. Standing alone in the wind, looking at the bloody battlefield, although Jun Moxie's heart was as hard as steel, he still asked himself, was it worth it? Was it worth it? This was undoubtedly a very difficult question to answer. Although he had previously said that he did not care about the people of the world, that the Xian continent had nothing to do with him, that he was not a hero, but how could he really not care about it? After all, there were still his brothers on this continent. And his family, friends, and people he could not let go of. How could he really not care? Perhaps he did not care about the people of the Xian continent, but how could he allow those disgusting strange races to enter the continent? Chapter 1155. Before this, Jun Moxie had already estimated the strength of the strange races from the highest possible limit. But he still did not expect that this battle would be so tragic. The moment the battle started, Tianfe actually lost 8 Saint Venerables, 1 Eagle King, 3,000 Eagle People warriors, and 2,000 Bear People warriors. In just 4 hours, they had paid such a heavy price. And in terms of strength, all the warriors that participated in the battle had a heaven reversal pill that could heal any injuries. That was a treasure that was equivalent to having an extra life. But in the end, they were left with less than 1/6 of their manpower. Then, even if the entire Tianfe forest sent out all their elites, how long could they last? Since the strange races had such powerful strength, then how did the 3 holy lands and 1 ferocious lands win the previous war for seizing the heavens? One had to know that Jun Moxie had used the previous war for seizing the heavens as a reference. Saints could participate in the war for seizing the heavens. The Holy Emperor was the main force. Saint Venerables were the highest level of battle. All along, this was how Jun Moxie had understood it. But from the looks of it now, it seemed like he had understood it wrongly. But what Gu Han and the rest had said seemed to be the same. At most, there would be a peak expert of the highest level fighting, but it would not be more than a few people. Shui Yen, where is the old battlefield of the war for seizing the heavens? Jun Moxie asked. About 1,000 li southwest from here. Mei Shuiyan had already finished stitching up the Eagle King's body. The Eagle King's feathers were neatly back on his body. He was as ferocious as he was when he was alive. Mei Shuiyan, who was standing there in a daze, subconsciously answered. There are people guarding the Holy Lands? Jun Moxie raised his brows. Why is there no one guarding it? Mei Shuiyan said. For generations, the 3 Holy Lands and the Heaven Saint Palace have always had a strong force guarding there. In these 10,000 years, the war for seizing the heavens has never been lost. Is there someone guarding there? Jun Emosie's eyes flashed with a knife-like glint. Since there are experts guarding that place, then why haven't they come over when the battle here is already in full swing and the sky is turning upside down? The change here is no ordinary change. It's the collapse of the heavenly pillar that separates the 2 continents. Where are they now? Jun Moxie slowly raised his head and looked into the distance. With an unusually indifferent tone, he said, the pillars of heaven's mountains collapse is extremely powerful. Under such power, not to mention ordinary people, even Shenxian experts, supreme martial artists, or even venerable martial artists would have a high chance of dying. Even saints would be injured under such awe-inspiring power. However, it would not be able to hurt the Holy Emperor, the Lord. Since it was such an important place, the experts stationed there must at least be at the saint level, right? Since they didn't die, there was no way they didn't know about this. How could they not know that the strange races had come with such an overwhelming force? But why haven't they arrived yet? Jun Moxie's voice was very indifferent when he said this. But not to mention Mei Shuiyan, who was familiar with Jun Moxie, even the slower Bear King and Bear Mountain could clearly sense the bone-chilling coldness in Jun Moxie's tone. In Jun Moxie's 2 lives, he had never suffered such a heavy loss. After this battle, the vanguard had lost more than 80% of its troops. This included the Beast King of Tian Fa, the Eagle King, 8 Saint Venerables, and all the elite experts of the Eagle people. Even the warriors of the Bear tribe who were lucky enough to survive were all injured, and their battle prowess was greatly reduced. Such a heavy loss, with so many of his brothers leaving him, how could Jun Emosien not feel pain? If Mei Shuiyan's heart was broken, Jun Moxie's was no worse. At least Mei Shuiyan could still cry secretly when she was alone, and Jun Dashao could comfort her. But Jun Moxie could only bury all the pain and sorrow in his heart. He couldn't even tell anyone. Because he was a man. And a leader. Honestly speaking, Tian Fa had indeed sacrificed a lot in this battle, but the results of the battle were glorious to the extreme. With the loss of 5,000 men, they had destroyed more than 20 times the enemy's forces, including the 13 supremacy enduring heavens, over 100 frenzy blade enduring earths, and hundreds of thousands of outsiders. Such a result was something that the Xian continent had never achieved in the past 10,000 years. Such a glorious result was definitely unprecedented, and would never be repeated again. But no matter how glorious the battle results were, it did not enter Jun Dashao's heart. No matter how great the battle results were, it could not be exchanged for the lives of his own men. Jun Moxie was an extremely protective person. In his heart, not to mention 100 or 200,000, even all the outsiders were not as important as his Tian Fa brothers. Jun Moxie had always known that wars were filled with sacrifices. As long as there was a war, there would definitely be sacrifices. But he did not wish for this sacrifice to befall on his own people. So he did not care about the price to raise the battle strength of Tian Fa's Xian beasts. He even gave a heaven-defying medicine like the Heaven Reversal Pill to everyone, ensuring that everyone had one. But there were still sacrifices. The pain and sorrow in Jun Moxie's heart could be imagined, but there was no one to vent it on. All the outsiders had already disappeared without a trace, and this matter did not seem to implicate the Heaven Saint Palace or the Three Holy Lands. But right at this moment, Jun Moxie unexpectedly found out that there were other people in charge of guarding the area. And it was a sizable number of extremely powerful experts. Jun Moxie was completely enraged. He was enraged to the extreme. After the battle with Jean Luanhui and understanding the strength of the Heaven Saint Palace and the Three Holy Lands, he was still calculating the strength of both sides. But right now, he could no longer consider it. There was no need to calculate the strength of the enemy. He would know sooner or later as long as he continued killing. No matter how strong or weak the enemy was, he would definitely kill them all. Since it was destined that only one side could survive, then it did not matter how strong or weak they were. But when he found out that the experts guarding the Pillar of Heaven's mountains clearly had the strength to participate in the battle, but did not appear, this result made Jun Moxie completely enraged. His rage instantly rose to the limit. The Tian Fa allied army could be considered to have been completely wiped out this time. In such a tragic situation, those people actually did not lend a helping hand. If they lent a helping hand, would the 8 Saint Venerables of Tian Fa all die? Would the Eagle King and the warriors of the Eagle people all be sacrificed? As Jun Moxie's words rang in her ears, Mei Shuiyan's breathing suddenly stopped. An unconcealable bone-deep hatred shot out from her eyes. She was too overwhelmed with grief just now and did not think about anything else. But now that she was reminded by Jun Moxie, Mei Shuiyan felt as if she had been struck by lightning. Her heart suddenly exploded. But in order to help you fight against the strange races, our Tian Fa could be said to have given it our all. Ever since the incident at the Pillar of Heaven's mountains, we had already sent our troops to the battlefield from far away. All of this was for the continent, for all of you. But why was it that when the first batch of our allied army arrived and started the battle with the strange races, they were almost completely wiped out in the end? And all of you who were so close did not lend a helping hand at all. Even until now, not a single one of you has appeared. Why? Could it be that at such a time, you still chose to watch from the sidelines? Sit on top of the mountain and watch the tigers fight. Do you really think that we are brainless idiots? Damn it! Mei Shuiyan clenched her teeth and spat out these 2 words. She could no longer suppress the murderous aura that she had been suppressing just now, and it instantly soared up. Although you did not directly kill us, but my brothers have indirectly died in your hands. This kind of bastard is even more hateful than those strange races invaders. This enmity, this hatred, is absolutely irreconcilable. Jun Moxie scoffed coldly, also filled with killing intent. But he did not say anything else. He took out the best medicine and treated the injuries of the lucky survivors of the bear tribe. The cries of cranes could be heard from afar. Looking from afar, it was like a vast expanse of white clouds had arrived. The second batch of reinforcements. Solitary Eagle and Feng Wanyun had finally arrived with the Heaven Destroyer and Spirit Devourer, as well as the 300 Xian cranes. They had arrived an hour earlier than expected. Jun Moxie's face was as hard as steel. That night, the Tian Fa and Evil Monarch Manor's army set up camp 30 li away from the battlefield. But no one was able to sleep. No one cried. The entire camp was terrifyingly silent, and the oppressive atmosphere was so oppressive that it was hard to breathe. In the wee hours of the morning, Crane King Long Crane and Tiger King arrived with the third group of 6,000 warriors. In the silent night, in the silent camp, the Crane King's earth-shattering howl of grief suddenly rang out. Mei Shuiyan did not sleep the entire night. She did not even move her posture. She just sat in front of the Eagle King's corpse in the tent for the entire night. It was a silent night. According to Tian Fa's rules, the first night after the death of a dead brother, there must be a relative or elder to keep vigil. This was to send him on his final journey. Mei Shuiyan was the Eagle King's most respected elder sister. She should have been the best choice, but she was also the Tian Fa emperor. Tian Fa's rules forbade emperors from keeping vigil for their own people. Even for their own brother, the Eagle King, who was also a beast king of Tianfe, it was not allowed. Tianfe's Xian beasts respected the strong. This had been the case since ancient times. As the strongest emperor, he could not keep vigil for any of his own people. However, Mei Shui-yen disregarded everything and completely ignored this rule. Silently accompanying her brother, spending this last night, sending him on his final journey. The spirit tablets of the 8 Saint Venerables and 3,000 eagle people were neatly arranged. It was densely packed, as if the Xian eagles were still charging in formation. Jun Moxie, Mei Shuin, Crane King Long Crane, Bear King, Bear Mountain, and Tiger King Earthcracker sat quietly, like 5 statues not moving at all. Chapter 1156. This night was filled with sorrow, but it was also a night without the sound of crying. Tears only flowed in their hearts. The sky gradually turned white, and the tent also gradually brightened. Mei Shuin looked hesitantly at the sky that was gradually turning white, as if she was very reluctant to part. But she finally took a deep breath and said in a hoarse voice, 8 seniors, little eagle, and all the eagle people brothers. Have a safe journey. If you have time, you must come to Tianfe to visit. We miss you. Whether it's in the sky or on the ground, in the underworld, you are all our family. Mei Shuiyan stood up reluctantly and bowed deeply. 2 drops of crystal-clear tears finally could not be held back and fell to the ground as she bowed. Crane King, Bear King, and Tiger King knelt down and kowtowed at the same time. Their suppressed sobs could be heard faintly. All right, don't cry anymore. Let our brothers go on this last journey with peace of mind. Jun Moxie bowed deeply, his eyes red. This is war. As long as it is war, there will be sacrifices and casualties. And this war has only just begun. Who knows, maybe one day, we will go and find them. I believe that if that day really comes, we will definitely not wish to see our brothers so heartbroken. Tiger King, Bear King, and Crane King were both solemn. Even though their hearts were broken, their faces were even more resolute. Jun Moxie waved his hand, and the countless memorial tablets and Eagle King's corpse disappeared at the same time. They were kept into the Hongjun Pagoda. Only there could he ensure the integrity and safety of these things. Mei Shuiyan and the others were still looking around the empty tent reluctantly. Bear King slowly squatted down and placed his face on the ground where Eagle King's corpse had been. He closed his eyes tightly, and tears of heartache finally flowed out uncontrollably. But he did not make a sound, just his body twitching violently. Then, Bear Mountain slowly stood up, straightened his back, and walked out without looking back. Everyone, keep an eye on your troops and wait for orders. The battle could start again at any time. Jun Moxie took a deep breath. Suddenly, his face turned cold, and he said resolutely, before receiving the order from me or your big sister, if anyone dares to act on his own, he will be beheaded on the spot where 3,000 eagle people died. Bear Mountain, who was the first to walk out of the tent, and Crane King and Tiger King, who were still in the tent, shuddered. Being beheaded where one's brother had died in battle was the most severe form of punishment from Tianfe. Once they were dealt with in such a manner, that person would become the shame of Tianfe. In the entire Tianfe forest, no one would admit that this person was their brother. This was an order that Jun Moxie had no choice but to issue, fearing that these hot-blooded men would act on their own accord to avenge the Eagle King. Even though he was helpless, even though he was unwilling, he had no choice but to do so. Because this was the only way to truly restrain these beast kings who had already lost their sanity in the flames of hatred. After a while, the few beast kings had all walked out of the tent. Not far away, a few volcanoes had already stopped erupting, but thick black smoke was still rising from them. Solitary Eagle and Feng Wanyun led the Heaven Destroyer and Spirit Devourer troops and stood at the front lines, vigilantly watching the movements on the other side of the Pillar of Heaven's mountains. Tonight, they had already stayed vigilant like this for the entire night. Because this night belonged to the Tianfe forest. Although Solitary Eagle and Feng Wanyun did not participate in the memorial service for the Eagle King and the 8 Saint Venerables, They were here to silently guard them, ensuring that the warriors of Tion Fa would not be disturbed when they released the grief in their hearts and sent their brothers on their final journey. Are there any movements from the strange races? Jun Moxie asked. Up until now, there are only small groups of people gathering. There's not much movement. Feng Zhuanyun's body was as straight as a spear. When he heard Jun Moxie's question, he immediately answered. Yesterday, why did so many experts gather in such a short period of time? Logically speaking, since such a large-scale battle had already occurred, the strange races should be sending reinforcements continuously. But why is it so deserted now? Something's not right, ah? Jun Moxie frowned as he pondered. His gaze slowly swept across the surrounding mountains. Suddenly, his heart skipped a beat. At this time, many volcanoes had already stopped erupting. And the temperature had also dropped by a lot. Compared to yesterday, it was almost incomparable. The strange races are waiting for the volcanoes to completely stop erupting. Jun Moxie's Adam's apple bobbed up and down as a cold light shot out from his eyes. He exchanged a look with Mei Xuan and saw the worry in each other's eyes. In yesterday's battle, the strange races had suffered heavy casualties. They must have realized that a forceful attack would not be effective, so they changed their strategy. After all, from the sacrifice of the eagle and bear tribes, it could be seen that the strength of the strange races was extremely strong. Even the 8 Saint Venerables had fallen one by one. Jun Moxie, Mei Xuan, and the Xian beasts of Tion Fa were naturally unwilling to accept such a result. But the strange races' side was in an even worse state. A total of 13 supremacy-enduring heavens had fallen in this battle. Over 300 frenzy blade-enduring earths were also finished. If one were to say that the strange races could remain unmoved in such a battle, Jun Moxie would not believe it even if he was beaten to death. With such a strong battle strength, they clearly wanted to break through in one fell swoop and then continue to send reinforcements. But now, such a large number of strange races had died in battle. He believed that the strange races would definitely not be able to bear such a price. So, they had no choice but to change their strategy. They might as well not be in a hurry to start a war. They would wait until the volcanoes stopped erupting and the weather returned to normal. When the environment was no longer a burden, then they would make a comeback. And this idea was extremely sinister, because the pillar of heaven's mountains, an insurmountable barrier, had already disappeared forever. Without the threat of the volcanoes, the vast expanse of land was equivalent to a smooth road. At that time, once the strange races pressed forward, they would be able to easily break through any direction they chose. No matter how many experts the Xian continent had, they would definitely not be able to defend against all of them. The reason was simple. This battle line was simply too long, and before the volcanoes completely stopped erupting as well as the cooling down period, all of these required time. During this period of time, the strange races could make use of this opportunity to gather their army. Although the Xian continent could also gather their army, firstly, the distance was long, and secondly, Xian was in a defensive position. But the strange races completely held the initiative to attack. They could break through from any direction, while the Xian continent could only defend passively. The difference between this was like the difference between heaven and earth. Faced with such a terrible situation, how should they deal with it? Jun Moxie paced back and forth slowly, deep in thought. But he felt completely clueless. Mei Xuan furrowed her brows, also thinking of a solution. After a while, the two of them sighed at the same time. Defending passively is not a good idea, but taking the initiative to attack, Jun Moxie sighed and said, is also not appropriate. After all, that is the strange race's territory. If we take the initiative to attack, we may not be able to find their weak points. And the moment we attack, the number of people participating in the battle must not be small, and they must all be elite experts. In this way, our defense will naturally be weaker. Once the strange races attack, our strength is already insufficient, and with this, it will be even more difficult to defend. Mei Xuan nodded. Jun Moxie nodded heavily, his expression turning uglier. Just at this time, The two of them sensed something and looked into the distance. In the distance, figures were flying, approaching Tian Fa's camp from several directions. Among them, the person leading the fastest was the #1 person of the Heaven Saint Palace, Gu Han. The people from the 3 Holy Lands had finally arrived. Jun Moxie's face darkened, and his eyes turned cold. Mei Shui-Yan's pretty face instantly turned pale, and her heart was filled with a monstrous killing intent and boundless anger. If you want to defend against external threats, you must first defend against internal threats. Jun Emosia muttered in a low voice. His eyes shone brightly as he said slowly, "The worries of the future are like a thorn in my back. Even if the world is destroyed, I must get rid of them. I must get rid of them." These words, he said resolutely and decisively. Mei Shuiyan was shocked and turned to look at him. "Our brothers can't die in vain," Jun Moxie said calmly. "As the main culprits, the strange races must pay the price. But those who watched from the sidelines must give me an explanation no matter what. Otherwise, I will feel that the Eagle King is watching me from the netherworld. This kind of gaze makes me feel guilty and unable to sleep peacefully." Underground, there are still the 8 Saint Venerables and 3,000 Eagle People brothers, and 2,000 Bear People brothers. They are all looking at me. Their eyes are filled with trust. I, Jun Moxie, cannot let my brothers down. Even if I have to pay the price of the entire continent, I must get this explanation back. Otherwise, this kind of thing will happen again. And we can no longer afford to lose any of our brothers. After saying that, Jun Emosia took large strides forward to meet them. Behind him, Tiger King, Bear King, and Crane King's eyes shone brightly. They looked at Jun Moxie's back view, not moving for a long time. Mei Shuin looked at her lover's back view, and her eyes suddenly became hazy. In the tent, Jun Moxie sat boldly on the highest chair in the middle. His eyes were as cold as knives as he looked at Gu Han and the rest who were walking in one after another. Mei Shui-Yan sat down on the seat beside him. Tiger King, Bear King, Crane King, Solitary Eagle, and Feng Wan-Yun sat below Mei Shuin. The 7 of them looked extremely solemn. Gu Han was the first to enter the tent, his face full of smiles. But he instantly sensed the strange atmosphere in the tent and couldn't help but ask in surprise, "Manor Lord Jun, may I ask what happened? Why is it like this?" Behind him, the people from Heaven Saint Palace, Shi Ruochen, Huyen Ao Bo, and Mo Wudao also entered in shock. They did not know what Jun Moxie wanted to do by putting on such a posture. Chapter 1157. Today's 3rd chapter. What's missing is the 13th chapter. This chapter has 4,200 words. Reinforcements? What reinforcements? Jun Moxie laughed coldly. Who is whose reinforcements? Mo Wudao, Lord Mo, is your brain flooded with water? You must think clearly before you speak. Don't let others think that the leaders of the 3 Holy Lands only know how to fart and not speak properly. Although Mo Wudao himself was not a peerless expert, due to his esteemed status, even the Saint Venerable Seniors of the 3 Holy Lands had to treat him with respect. When had he ever been scolded so harshly by someone like this? His face burned and blood rushed to his head. Just as he was about to say something, he was stopped by Gu Han, who sat down first. Gu Han knew that Jun Moxie was not the kind of person who would be hot-headed and arrogant. There must be a reason why he was behaving like this right now. Otherwise, it was impossible for him to be acting so coldly when he was fighting alongside the enemy and even generously giving out the peerless divine medicine yesterday. Manor Lord Jun, if the Heaven Saint Palace has offended you in any way, please feel free to say it. With the enemy before us, if we do not remove the estrangement between us, I believe it will be difficult for us to cooperate. Gu Han sat down calmly and smiled. Good, Senior Gu is a straightforward person. Since that's the case, I will not act pretentiously and speak frankly. A cold smile appeared on Jun Moxie's face as he asked, but I wonder how many people are guarding the battlefield of the war for seizing the heavens. Gu Han's eyes narrowed inexplicably. As expected, there was a problem. But he did not know what those people had done. To be able to make this unruly evil monarch angry to this extent? But right now, both sides were working together to resist the invasion of the strange races. It was not a good time to have any disputes, especially when the other side was the main force of this battle. There are quite a number of people guarding the battlefield. Gu Han thought for a moment and decided to speak the truth. After all, the strange races might not keep their promises. They might come and harass us at any time. Jun Moxie snorted coldly and said, in Senior Gu's opinion, the unexpected collapse of the Pillar of Heaven's mountains and the subsequent eruption of the volcano will cause them to suffer heavy casualties. That's impossible. Gu Han laughed. Those people are all elites handpicked by the three holy lands. Even the weakest amongst them was at the Saint Realm. The collapse of the Pillar of Heaven's mountains this time was an accident. Although it happened suddenly, it shouldn't have buried so many experts. I can guarantee this. Oh? Was that so? But how many people were there in total? Jun Mo-sia tilted his head and asked, what are the specific arrangements for each level of expert? Knowing that there must be a deeper meaning behind Jun Moxie's question, Gu Han did not beat around the bush and explained in detail, the number of guardians in the war for seizing the heavens has never been less than 300. Among them, the number of people was increasing. There were 2 Saint Monarchs, 18 Saint Venerables, 100 Holy Emperors, and 200 Saints. Every 100 years, the Saints would be rotated. All the Saints stationed in the war for seizing the heavens would return to the Heaven Saint Palace to prepare to break through the bottleneck of the Holy Emperor. And after the breakthrough, there would be another rotation. When they returned, they would be able to advance further. Gu Han smiled and said, such a rotation is to make use of the strange races, to train the soldiers through battle, to raise the quality of their experts. Only then can they ensure that there will be many experts. In fact, after the accident, the Heaven Saint Palace and the 3 Holy Lands have lost a lot of their strength. This force in the war for seizing the Heavens camp is already the most elite force that we can bring out. What a good using war to train. The Heaven Saint Palace's strength is indeed strong. The most elite force Jun Moxie laughed mockingly. Since the 3 Holy Lands still have such a strong force, they probably won't put the strange races in their eyes. Then this most elite force of yours, where are they now? Naturally, they are guarding the war for seizing the heavens. This is their duty. If there is no huge change, why would they move? Gu Han suddenly paused. War for seizing the heavens? The Pillar of Heaven's mountains have already collapsed. Where is the war for seizing the heavens? Huge change? Is this not considered a huge change? Jun Moxie Lenglang said. I really cannot understand Senior Gu's words. Could it be that Senior Gu is joking? This old man has indeed misspoken. Manor Lord Jun is saying, and could it be that they did not participate in the battle a few days ago? Gu Han's face instantly turned extremely ugly. As soon as they arrived, they could tell that an extremely tragic battle had just taken place on this piece of land. The intensity of this battle could be said to be the first time in their lives. Just from the little clues, there were at least over 20 Saint Venerables who had participated in this battle. And most of them had already fallen. Otherwise, the heaven-earth spiritual chi here would not be so unbalanced. So Gu Han had assumed that those people who were originally guarding the Pillar of Heaven's mountains had definitely participated in this battle. Who knew that Jun Moxie would suddenly ask such a series of questions? There was a reason behind it, and the answer was obvious. These peak experts actually did not participate in this battle. This time, if Gu Han still could not figure out what the problem was, then he would have lived these 3,000 years in vain. The faces of the experts of Heaven Saint Palace, Missouri Wudao, and the rest all changed within Shua. Many of them even had flames of rage in their eyes. With the experience and knowledge of the people present, they could easily guess what kind of losses would be caused by such a huge battle. Since those people did not participate in the battle, then the losses from before would naturally all be on the heads of Tian Fa Forest. This was something that almost no one could tolerate. Even Mo Wudao's eyes were filled with intense rage. Right now, they already understood Jun Moxie. If they were the ones who encountered such a thing, their reactions would probably be much more intense than his. This was directly throwing stones at a person who was down, and it was towards their own comrades. And the success or failure of this battle directly concerned the lives of the world, the entire continent. This kind of behavior was simply shameless to the extreme. No one had imagined that these people would be crushed to death by the pillar of heaven's mountains, because that was something impossible. Right now, there was no battle in other places. Only this place. There was only one conclusion: they did not want to make a move. So they did not make a move. In yesterday's battle, the outsiders had mobilized close to 200,000 people. There was no lack of experts among them, including thousands of hell-enduring ghosts, over 400 frenzy blade-enduring earths, and 13 supremacy-enduring heavens. They fought with our Tian Fa brothers who had traveled tens of thousands of li to reinforce them, and fought for a full 6 hours. Until the battle ended, Tian Fa did not see any reinforcements. Jun Moxie suddenly stood up, his hands behind his back. His eyes were like two sharp swords, sweeping across the faces of everyone from the 3 holy lands. Where his gaze landed, everyone was speechless and lowered their heads. All of them were so ashamed that they could not show their faces. They had used all sorts of methods, preached righteousness, moved their emotions, and begged in every possible way before the Tian Fa forest and evil Monarch Manor finally let bygones be bygones and fought with all their might. They traveled tens of thousands of li, traveling day and night to rush to the Pillar of Heaven's mountains to join the battle. But who would have thought that while the reinforcements were rushing over and bathed in blood, their own people, who were so close at hand, were like turtles hiding in their shells, watching from the side. Everyone's face felt as if they had been slapped in the face with a burning sensation. Does everyone here know the details of this battle? Jun Mosie's face revealed an unconcealable, mournful yet incomparably proud expression. The Tian Fa people around him also had a sorrowful and proud expression on their faces, but they still puffed their chests up high. This was the pride that belonged only to Tian Fa. It was exchanged with the lives of their brothers. In this moment, everyone from Tian Fa was filled with pride and grief. Gu Han could already imagine the reason behind it. His face was as red as blood, and the veins on his forehead throbbed with anger. Gritting his teeth, he said, "I would like to hear the details." His anger was naturally not because of Jun Moxie's impoliteness and overbearingness, but because of the inaction of the heaven-seizing army. Right now, Gu Han was only thinking about how good it would be if a crack suddenly appeared on the ground. He would definitely dig into it immediately. No matter what, it would be better than this kind of unbearable torture right now. This kind of humiliation was given to him by his own people. He couldn't avoid it, and there was no way to avoid it. He could only listen obediently and bear the consequences. This battle. The first wave of Tian Fa's army set off from the Tian Fa forest, traveling a long distance to reach here. Everyone participated in the entire process. Jun Moxie's voice suddenly grew louder, as if he was shouting, his voice trembling slightly. The Eagle King led 3,000 Eagle People warriors, and the Bear King led 3,000 elites of the Bear tribe. There were also the Tian Fa forest's Saint Venerable Lu and the other Saint Venerables, engaging in a bloody battle with the strange race's army of over 200,000. Before coming here, the strength of these brothers had all been raised using secret techniques. Even the weakest among them had reached the 4th level of the Venerable Realm, just a step away from stepping into the Saint Realm. Jun Moxie's voice reverberated in everyone's ears. Speaking till here, Jun Moxie paused and raised his head to the sky. Taking a deep breath, he said indifferently, "Everyone, do you know the final result of this battle? The people of the Holy Land who speak about the safety of the continent and the people of the world?" Gu Han felt his face burning, but he had no choice but to speak. "Won. Of course we won. If we didn't win, do you think this place would still be so peaceful? Not only did we win this battle, it was a great victory," Jun Moxie said solemnly. Close to 200,000 strange races soldiers were completely routed, leaving less than 10,000 who managed to escape with their lives. Among them, the thousands of hell-enduring ghosts were mostly buried here. As for the 400 over frenzy blade-enduring earths, they were all turned into dust. The strongest 13 supremacy-enduring heavens were all killed, without exception. With a loud boom, the tent was filled with agitation and disbelief. With the strange race's strength, even if the 3 holy lands at their peak sent out all their forces, they would still have to pay an unimaginably huge price in order to obtain victory. But right now, the Tian Fa forest had actually achieved such a glorious battle result. How was this possible? How is this possible? Mo Wudao exclaimed in shock and joy. Senior Gu, I was only talking about the result of this battle and the enemy's losses. But do you know what kind of price our Tian Fa forest had to pay for this battle? Jun Moxie did not bother with Mo Wudao. He only stared at Gu Han and said solemnly, Our Tian Fa, the 8 Tian Fa Saint Venerables, the king of the Eagle People, 3,000 Eagle People warriors, and over 2,000 Bear Tribe warriors, all became legends in this battle. Gu Han suddenly raised his head. His face was pale white. Do you want to know how they died? Jun Moxie could only feel an uncontrollable rage in his heart. He rushed forward and said hoarsely, All the brothers of our Tian Fa who died in this battle, not a single one of them left their bodies on that battlefield. Other than the Eagle King who died protecting his comrades, the others all died by self-detonation. And it was the extreme self-detonation of their bodies, souls, and Xian Qi. In this way, we achieved the glorious battle result that sect head Mo thought was impossible. Everyone's body shook violently, and they were all dumbfounded. Everyone had already expected that this battle would be exceptionally intense, but they had never imagined that it would be so tragic. A total of 8 Saint Venerables and 6,000 warriors above the Saint Realm actually had to use the most extreme method of self-detonation to stop the enemy's invasion. Right now, I only want to ask one thing. When our warriors were bathed in blood, where were your people? The Eagle People and Bear Tribe's allied forces traveled day and night to reach this place. Where are the elite experts of the war for seizing the heavens? Jun Moxie's gaze was like a cold arrow as he looked at Gu Han and the rest. Even if they did not expect the strange races to invade so quickly and did not notice the start of the battle, when our warriors were self-detonating one by one to defend against the strange races, the elite experts that you left behind in the war for seizing the heavens are less than an hour's journey away from here, even with the speed of a first-level holy emperor. Where are they? Could it be that these experts are all deaf? Are they all blind? Jun Moxie smiled indifferently, a cold, killing intent flashing in his eyes. Gu Han, those who died in battle are all my brothers. They are my brothers, Jun Moxie's brothers. All this while, he had addressed Gu Han as Senior Gu. But now, the way he addressed Gu Han had suddenly changed, calling him by his name. Although his voice was as indifferent as before, it was filled with a sense of urgency and hostility. The upper echelons of the 3 holy lands, a total of 40 to 50 people, all felt extremely ashamed under Jun Moxie's gaze. Humiliation. This was definitely the greatest humiliation. They watched helplessly as their comrades died in battle one by one, and the people on their side didn't even show up. Facing the cold gazes of Jun Moxie, Mei Xuan, and the rest, Gu Han suddenly felt that there was nothing he could say. Not only Gu Han, everyone from the 3 holy lands found it hard to say a single word. Even the smooth and slick Mo Wudao was speechless. This was an unforgivable sin. Chapter 1158. Before Gu Han could speak, a voice suddenly rang out from afar, filled with mockery. Explanation? Explanation? What explanation? How to explain? Even if he really died with grievances, so what? Get out here. Jun Moxie's face changed. Gu Han roared in rage. Who's the one playing tricks? Show yourself. Swoosh, swoosh, swoosh. Hundreds of people landed on the ground outside the tent at the same time. The 2 people in the lead were dressed in white robes and wore golden crowns. Their faces were thin, and their eyes shone with a golden light as they looked at the people in the tent with disdain. And this kind of gaze was even more provocative as it landed on Jun Moxie's face. His figure flashed, and everyone only saw a blur before their eyes. Jun Moxie had already left the tent. Jun Emosie's entire body was mixed with an extremely tyrannical and terrifying aura as he glared at the approaching man. Ever since he had been reborn in this world, Jun Emosie had never released his murderous aura without any reservation. His aura had reached an extremely fierce level. In this instant, whether it was the people inside or outside the tent, whether it was the people from the 3 Holy Lands or the evil Monarch Manor, everyone could clearly feel Jun Moxie's determination to destroy everything in his path. Right now, he was like the god of death, the Nether King descending into the mortal world. Every movement, every glance, and even every twitch of his eyebrows was filled with a chilling, surging aura of death. Gu Han only felt a chill in his heart as he hurriedly walked out to stand in front of Jun Moxie. The current Jun Moxie actually made him, a Saint Monarch expert, feel an indescribable sense of danger. That was the feeling that his life and soul were in mortal danger. Gu Han had a feeling that with Jun Moxie's current state, he only needed to say a word and he would be able to poke a hole in the sky. As for the people of the world, they were nothing in his eyes. What he wanted was only an explanation, an explanation. At this moment, the evil monarch could not be bothered to consider what righteousness and the bigger picture. One word of disagreement, and he would kill. There was only slaughter. Who was talking just now? Jun Moxie smiled faintly and raised his eyebrows. The light in his eyes exploded like thunder. He looked at the 2 people in front of him and said lightly, "Explanation? What explanation? Explain, how do we explain? Even if we die with everlasting regret, so what?" Who said that? Gu Han was practically stomping his feet in anxiety. This bunch of damned bastards, they had disappeared when they should have acted, but they had appeared when they should not have appeared. They could not have appeared earlier or later, but they just had to appear at this time that they should not have appeared. And they even said something that even Gu Han himself could not forgive. These 2 people were the other 2 Saint Monarchs of the Heaven Saint Palace. Lightning Sage Monarch Xiachang Tian and Thunderclap Sage Monarch Ji Bowen. These 2 had been guarding the war for seizing the heavens for over 3,000 years. His cultivation was only slightly lower than Gu Han, a 3rd-grade Saint Monarch. In the entire Xian continent, he could be considered as a true peak expert. It was just that these 2 people's personalities were extremely extreme, and they were extremely protective of their own people. It was precisely because of their stubborn and self-opinionated personalities that they were not up to the task of guarding the Heaven Saint Palace or being the leader of the Holy Lands. So Gu Han had arranged for them to guard the war for seizing the heavens for training. One had to admit that this arrangement of Gu Han's made the best use of their talents. The weaknesses of these 2 people complemented each other perfectly when dealing with the strange races in the war for seizing the heavens. In these 3,000 years, who knew how many times the strange races had been defeated by them? To the Xian continent, these 2 people were definitely worthy of being called great heroes and meritorious subjects. With their cultivation bases, how could they not know that such a fierce battle was taking place here from such a short distance away? So when Gu Han heard Jun Moxie's words, he immediately knew that the root of this matter was these 2 people. The reason was very simple. They had never liked the battle strength of Tian Fe. As for the Xian beasts representing the Xian continent to participate in the war for seizing the heavens, they felt that it was the greatest humiliation to the human race. How could the safety of the human race be protected by a bunch of wild beasts? Even if they won, it was still a great humiliation. Humans under the protection of wild beasts. Just the thought of it was a great humiliation. Originally, Gu Han was still thinking that it was fine if they didn't come out. At most, they would take care of Tian Fa a little more. Then he would slowly erase this influence. But who would have thought that they would suddenly appear here? This time, both sides were facing each other with swords drawn and bows drawn. There was no room for negotiation. The wrong time, the wrong place, and the wrong person had said the wrong words. The only result would be an extremely wrong result. "It's me." "What is it?" The Lightning Saint Monarch, Xiachang Tian, took a step forward and looked at Jun Moxie playfully. Kid, from your appearance, you should also be a human. You're not a Xian beast in human form, right? Jun Moxie looked at Xia Chang Tian coldly and said slowly, in this life, the people I hate the most are never my enemies. Since they belong to the enemy, then whatever the enemy does, no matter how despicable, shameless, and dirty, it is all right. I will only go and kill them, but I will not hate them. His words were completely irrelevant to the question. It was 1,000 li away from the main topic. But everyone could feel the coldness in it. I know you hate us for not taking action. This old man also knows what you hate. Xia Chang Tian's eyes flashed with anger, but he still suppressed his temper. You want to say that the people you hate the most in your life are people like us who stand by the side and do nothing? But do you know why this old man stood by the side and did nothing? There's always a reason for everything. Jun Moxie chuckled coldly. No matter what the reason is, it's all the same. Ridiculous. Xia Chang Tian snorted coldly. If not for the fact that we're facing a great battle, this old man would have killed you with just this sentence. Jun Moxie roared with laughter. But his laughter suddenly stopped. Even if we're facing a great enemy, this old man will kill you with my hands first. Xia Chang Tian's eyes narrowed as he stared at Jun Moxie with a piercing gaze. After a long time, he said in a low voice, to think that you're still a human. You don't even have the slightest bit of awareness as a human. Do you know the difference between Xian beasts and humans? Jun Moxie slowly closed his eyes and acted as if he hadn't heard anything. The spiritual qi in his body circulated vigorously. He was preparing to adjust his strength to the peak. The strength of this person in front of him was deep and unfathomable. His current strength was not even comparable to this person. But no matter what, this person was definitely going to die today. He must die. Xia Chang Tian was practically jumping with rage. If not for the fact that Gu Han kept giving him meaningful looks, he would have already turned hostile. This young evil monarch was simply too lawless. What kind of status does this old man have? To be willing to lower my status and explain to him is already giving him a lot of face. He actually closed his eyes. This was intolerable. Xian beasts, in the beginning of the continent, were merely mounts for us humans. Xia Chang Tian said darkly. With the passage of time, tens of thousands of years have passed. To think that mere beasts would actually transform into humans and openly participate in the war for seizing the heavens. This is simply the biggest joke in the world. Jun Moxie closed his eyes and adjusted his breathing, not saying a single word. We humans are the most intelligent of all creatures. How can mere Xian beasts be mentioned in the same breath as us? And now, you actually dare to say that these beasts are your brothers? Could it be that you've already given up on your pride as a human and are willing to become a Xian beast? Xia Chang Tian said slowly. In this world, you must remember not to forget that your ancestors are also humans. Mei Shuiyin and the rest's eyes were spitting fire. They could no longer hold it in. Tiger King and Bear King were about to rush out to fight. But they were held back by Long Crane. Brother-in-law is here. Let's see what brother-in-law has to say. Jun Moxie finally opened his eyes slowly. Are you done? Xia Chang Tian Lenglang said. What do you want? If you're done, then let's make our move. Jun Moxie said indifferently. His eyelids flipped, and his eyes shot out like lightning, sweeping past the 300 people in front of him. He said emotionlessly, I wonder how many people are still insisting on not rescuing them? If you have the guts, why don't you all take a step forward? Let me see. Arrogant. Xia Chang Tian roared in rage. Jun Moxie, you're seeking death. Gu Han hurriedly stood in the middle, his face scrunched up like a bitter gourd as he waved his hands. The enemy is right in front of us. All of you better speak less. AI, in such a perilous situation, are we really going to kill each other? I don't want to kill each other. It's this evil monarch that you invited that's too much. Xia Chang Tian Lenglang said. Boss Gu, I need an explanation for this matter. Explanation? Gu Han almost fainted from anger. You still want an explanation from me? What were you doing when the Alliance was fighting a bloody battle? Why didn't you come to help? Now, when others are criticizing you, not only do you not know your mistakes, you still want an explanation from me. What explanation? Mere Xian beasts are not worth saving. It's just a waste of manpower. Xia Changtian said calmly. Even without them, we've already resisted the strange races for 10,000 years. However, as cannon fodder, it's still necessary to exhaust the strength of the strange races. Gu Han was so angry that his entire body was trembling. This is a time of life and death for the entire continent, and you still have such a narrow-minded view. If they were to lose this battle, then all living beings would be plunged into an abyss of suffering. Xia Changtian, you've really disappointed me. 8 Saint Venerables, 5,000 Saint Holy Emperor warriors, to be buried just like that, we won't lose this battle, Xia Changtian said disdainfully. This old man has been fighting against the strange races for over 3,000 years. Do you think I don't know them? In these 3,000 years, when have they ever been able to cross the Pillar of Heaven's mountains from my hands? But the Pillar of Heaven's mountains is already gone. Gu Han roared. Can you face reality a little? What's the use of always being so arrogant? Shut up. A loud shout rang out. A loud voice interrupted the two's argument. Gu Han and Xia Changtian were both stunned. They didn't expect that someone would actually dare to interrupt their conversation. Chapter 1159. You don't want to kill innocent people by mistake? Xia Changtian suddenly let out a long laugh and mocked. Does that mean you still plan to kill all of us? Is it that strange to kill us? Jun Moxie also laughed mockingly. I only want to see if you dare to step out since you dare to do it. Well, why wouldn't I dare? This old man will be the first. Xia Changtian's face was filled with killing intent as he took a step forward and glared at Jun Emosia. I want to see if this old man will be the one in charge of this matter. Yes, there is a battle here, and it is very intense. But this old man will not come to help, and I will not allow anyone to come. But how do you want to seek justice? Saint Monarch Thunderclap, Ji Bo Wen, also took a step forward. This old man also does not approve of wasting our limited forces on a bunch of Xian beasts. Allies? Reinforcements? They are not worthy. If Manor Lord Jun wishes to seek justice for them, then this old man will also join in. Both of them looked at Jun Moxie, their smiles full of mockery and ridicule. Don't forget about us. Behind the two of them, another 40 to 50 people stood up one after another. All of them crossed their arms and looked at Jun Moxie coldly. They were obviously watching him make a fool of himself. Punishment? Truly laughable. Who could punish 2 Saint Monarchs, 5 Saint Venerables, over 20 Holy Emperors, and over 20 saints at once? This was already half of the Heaven Saint Palace's strength. Who dared to say that he would kill them all? The law does not punish the masses. This phrase always makes sense. Let alone a puny evil monarch like you? What capabilities do you have to punish us? Do you have the capabilities? We have protected the continent for thousands of years. We are without a doubt the greatest heroes of this continent. How much have you contributed to the world at such a young age? And now, you want to punish us for a few Xian beasts? Kill us? What a joke! Seeing so many people slowly walking out, Gu Han's heart sank more and more. Sank to the bottom. He felt his vision turning black, and his body swayed. He knew that there was no way to resolve this matter peacefully. It was completely huge. After observing Jun Moxie for a period of time, he had gained a better understanding of his temper. This fellow would never succumb to threats. Today's lineup, if it was anyone else, as long as that person still had the slightest sense of the overall situation, they wouldn't be able to cause a ruckus. Even if he was humiliated, he could only let it go. But was Jun Moxie that kind of person? Jun Moxie's character was to become stronger when facing strong opponents. He had never compromised before. Using this kind of method to threaten him would only backfire. Gu Han sighed in despair in his heart. If the people from the Holy Land who were guarding the war for seizing the heavens could come up with a reason, such as they really couldn't come out, and then they could sincerely admit their mistakes, and then he could mediate between them, there might be a slight chance of this matter being settled. Even if Jun Moxie still wanted to settle the score, it would not be at this place and now. But now, with so many people standing out, there was no way to turn the situation around. Gu Han clearly knew that Jun Moxie definitely had a reason for coming to this battlefield. But it was definitely not for the sake of the world. And it was definitely not for the sake of the 3 holy lands. If he was really forced into a corner, then this fellow would definitely not hesitate to destroy the entire continent to take revenge for his brothers. Facing this kind of troublemaker, only using softness to overcome hardness was the correct method. But now, this bunch of idiots had already caused the matter to go out of control. The 47 people on the other side all crossed their arms and looked at Jun Moxie disdainfully. So what if we humiliate you? So what if we don't have reinforcements? Do you really dare to start a war? The consequences of this war would be the destruction of the world, and the lives of the people would be plunged into misery and suffering. Just based on you, Jun Moxie, can you bear this responsibility? If a war really breaks out, then if there are any serious consequences, you, Jun Moxie, will be the main culprit. Trying to buy people's hearts by putting on airs? Asking for an explanation? Kid, you're dreaming too much at such a young age. Gu Han looked at their expressions and could clearly see what they were thinking. At this moment, including Mo Wudao, all of them were sighing heavily. They were speechless to the extreme. Idiots, fools. They really think that they're the hero. When did he, Jun Moxie, care about the lives of the world? As for the main culprit, he would not care about it at all. Do whatever you want, I'm just like this. This is Jun Moxie. You guys are playing with fire. It was no wonder. Xia Chang Tian and the rest did not even know what kind of person Jun Moxie was. If they knew of Jun Moxie's past deeds, they would not have done things so ruthlessly. If they knew that Jun Moxie had once braved the curses of the entire world for the sake of Guanqing Han, Xia Chang Tian and the rest would definitely not have done this. Furthermore, at that time, they had not forced Jun Moxie yet. Jun Moxie still did it. As for now, there was no suspense at all. Is there anyone else? Jun Moxie smiled strangely as he asked calmly. The remaining people all looked at each other, but no one stood out. The demon pupil saint, Lung Tong, stood in the middle of the formation, his face filled with anger. They had naturally heard of the battle here. In fact, there were even some who had come to watch. But when these people suggested to provide assistance, they were mercilessly berated by the 2 saint monarchs. In fact, many of them had even suffered quite a bit in order to come to help. Now that things had developed to such a state, they were also feeling extremely guilty and anxious in their hearts. If internal strife really broke out at a time like this, it would definitely not be a good thing. In fact, the safety of the entire continent might even be destroyed by this internal strife. Lung Tong had mentioned this possibility before. However, the 2 great sages were completely unmoved and could only sigh helplessly. What a huge formation! Jun Moxie laughed loudly as he suddenly strode out. Clang! The cry of a sword pierced through the air. A sword suddenly appeared, as if it had suddenly burrowed its way out of the void. The blade of the sword gleamed coldly as it hung silently in the air. There was a faint blood-red glow on the blade of the sword, and a chilling killing intent and majestic sword intent gushed out. Volcanoes were erupting all around, and the weather was already scorching hot. The temperature here was already so high that it made one's hair stand on end. But the moment this sword appeared, the temperature between heaven and earth instantly became much cooler. Moreover, a bone-piercing chill was slowly growing. Although this sword did not move at all, it attracted everyone's attention. Gu Han almost exclaimed in shock. This sword was the demon sword that had fought against Zhan Luanhui. Even Gu Han was extremely fearful of the might of this sword. The moment this demon sword appeared, all the hope that Gu Han had in his heart turned into despair. The continent was finished. Jun Moxie's killing intent had already been aroused. This demon-slaughtering sword was his killing weapon. This battle was unavoidable. No matter who won or lost this battle, the losses would definitely be huge. There was already a huge disparity in strength between them and the strange races, And with this sudden change, there was no longer any suspense. They would definitely lose. Good sword. The lightning Saint Monarch Xiachang Tian's eyes turned cold as he stared at Jun Moxie's face. Looks like you really want to be stubborn today? The safety of the world, the billions of lives in the world, you don't even place them in your eyes? The safety of the world, and the people of the continent. Ha! Jun Xie laughed mournfully. My brother has come for the safety of the world, and for the people of the continent. But even until my brothers died in battle, they did not see the world coming to their aid. When my brothers died in battle, the people of the world stood by the side and watched the show. Ha! Jun Moxie laughed crazily, tears almost flowing out of his eyes. Now, you're talking to me about the safety of the world and the lives of the continent? Xia Changtian, don't you think you're too shameless? Xia Changtian and Ji Bowen looked at each other, seeing the meaning in each other's eyes. They'd miscalculated. They naturally would not place Jun Moxie in their eyes, but the impact of this battle was huge. There were 10,000 Tian Fa soldiers here. And all of them were experts. If this battle really broke out, it would be a complete rupture. Then, even without the strange races doing anything, the world would already be finished. Originally, they thought that in front of the world, Jun Moxie would have some reservations no matter what. He wouldn't really make a move. But from the looks of it, they were wrong. Manor Lord Jun, can you allow this old man to say something? Gu Han sighed, and without waiting for Jun Moxie to speak, he hurriedly said, the enemy is right in front of us, and internal strife is not an auspicious thing. On account of this old man's face, can you postpone today's matter for now? Xia Changtian and the rest were wrong, but right now, the war still needs them. How about allowing them to redeem themselves? After this war for seizing the heavens, this old man will definitely give Manor Lord Jun a satisfactory explanation, even if I have to risk this life of mine. Jun Moxie shook his head slowly but firmly. My brothers died here. Their corpses are not even cold yet. Their souls are not far away. They are looking at me, waiting for me to give them an explanation. I don't want them to wait too long. Manor Lord Jun, please reconsider. Gu Han stepped forward anxiously. Gu Han, if you can't bear to part with your brothers, you can join forces with them to deal with me. Even if the 3 Holy Lands and the Heaven Saint Palace join forces, I, Jun Moxie, will still take them on. It doesn't matter. Jun Moxie looked at him coldly. Lengling said, but if these people don't die, my conscience will not be at ease. For the sake of the world, can't you just bear with it for a while? Gu Han cried out agitatedly. I, Jun Moxie, swear here. Jun Moxie laughed maniacally and said coldly, from today onwards, from this moment onwards, whoever dares to say the word for the world, in front of me will die. Gu Han's face was red with anxiety, but he blocked in front of Jun Moxie, refusing to let him pass. Get out of the way. Jun Xie said indifferently. I'll count to 3. If you don't get out of the way, I'll kill you. If you don't move aside, I'll immediately give the order. All Tian Fa warriors will immediately fight to the death with the 3 Holy Lands. Gu Han's body shook, and he was dumbfounded, unable to say a word. He believed that Jun Moxie would definitely be able to do it. This evil monarch, who was evil to the core, could not be understood with common sense. 1. Jun Xie uttered one word indifferently. The blood of yellow flame above his head let out a cheerful cry, and its entire body shone brightly. On the tip of the sword, there was a 5 zhang long sword light, blazing white. 2. Jun Moxie's eyes were as cold as ice, not changing at all. The blood of yellow flame buzzed, and the sword light changed direction, pointing straight at Gu Han's forehead. Gu Han's face was filled with conflict, and cold sweat poured down his forehead. Jun Moxie could not care, but he could not. 3. Jun Moxie shouted. Everyone listen up. Present. Mei Shuiyan, Bear King, Tiger King, Crane King, Solitary Eagle, and Feng Wanyun stepped forward at the same time. Jun Moxie roared and slashed down with his palm. Unsheathe your sword. Target everyone from the 3 Holy Lands, all of you. Wait. Before Jun Moxie could say the word kill, Gu Han shouted, and his body trembled. "This old man will retreat." Then he roared, "Everyone from the 3 Holy Lands, do not make any rash moves. Follow this old man and retreat to the side. If you dare to move, kill without mercy." With a single order, everyone from the 3 Holy Lands retreated from the scene, looking at Jun Moxie with fear in their eyes. "This fellow, he really dares Only the original 47 people were left on the scene, facing the lonely Jun Moxie. "Xia Changtian Ji Bo Wen." Jun Moxie roared, "Use your heads and give me an explanation. Little Eagle, my fellow brothers, your souls are not far away. Watch me take back justice for you." The howling winds rose in the sky, and the entire earth and sky turned bleak and desolate with Jun Moxie's loud roar. "Arrogant brat, this old man wants to see who will be the one to take whose head." Xia Changtian sneered, "All of you back off. This old man will personally experience the methods of this evil monarch. No one is allowed to leave. Everyone who doesn't want to help can all die for me." Before he finished speaking, Jun Moxie's body had already soared into the air. While he was in midair, countless black swords suddenly appeared around him, all of them gleaming with a cold light. 9 nether frost blade. The blood of yellow flame whistled through the air. The sword light lit up the entire sky. "Yin Yang escape." Jun Moxie roared and suddenly disappeared in midair. This caused Xia Changtian, who was about to attack, to lose his target. "Power of the 5 elements. Erupt for me." Another roar rang out. All of a sudden, countless fire dragons appeared in the sky, surrounding the entire area. The scorching flames caused the air to tremble. Countless amounts of water rose from the ground and poured down from the sky. On the ground, there was a rumbling sound, and a large crater with a radius of several thousand feet appeared. It was so deep that the bottom could not be seen. As for Xia Changtian and the rest, a large number of them were caught off guard and fell into the pit. The walls of the pit also glowed with the color of metal. Power of metal, imprisonment. Following that, Jun Moxie, who was hiding in the air, roared, and the entire world seemed to darken. The boundless black flames turned into fine black snowflakes that fell from the sky and fell slowly, covering an area of several hundred zhang. It was just enough to cover the entire entrance of the huge pit. Flame of primal chaos. This was the first time Jun Moxie had used all his trump cards to kill. Right here, for his brothers who had died in battle, he disregarded all consequences and attacked with all his might. Crazily attacking. Chapter 1160. There were a few mistakes in this chapter. My apologies. It has been amended. Many thanks to Brother Ao Xie Yun for the reminder. Thank you. I can only try my best to ensure that there will not be any similar mistakes in the future. Since you guys are not willing to give me an explanation, then I can only come and take it myself, this explanation. Even if the mountains crumble, even if the heavens collapse, even if the universe shatters, even if the human race is wiped out, it will still be the same, nothing more. My brother's justice has nothing to do with the lives of the world. Destruction of the world? That's not because of me. Even if the universe collapses, this daddy will only do what I should do. Now, this is what I should be doing. When Xia Changtian and the rest saw that Gu Han and the rest were not willing to stand up for them, they could not remain calm. They were both furious and fearful at the same time. Could it be that we've really done wrong? Jun Moxie didn't seem to care about the greater good. Although he was extremely angry, he didn't care too much about the situation in front of him. In the previous battle, Tian Fa had suffered great losses. A total of 8 Saint Venerables had fallen, and more than 80% of the 6,000 Tian Fa warriors had perished. Right now, in Tian Fa's camp, only Jun Moxie and Mei Xuan were at the Saint Venerable level, and there was also Big Bear who had just entered the Saint Venerable realm. The rest were only at the Saint Emperor level. Although there were less than 50 people on his side, the weakest had already reached the Saint level. Ji Bo Wen and himself were even 3rd-level Saint Monarchs. Although they could not compare to Gu Han, who was at the peak of the 3rd-level Saint Monarch level, From the looks of it, they were on a completely different level from Junimo Xie's side. As long as they were careful of the self-detonation attacks of Tian Fa's Xian beasts, they believed that everything would be under control. Even if they destroyed Tian Fa and then dealt with the strange races, they might not necessarily lose. At that time, Gu Han would not even protect his own brothers and watch us fight to the death. What right does he have to be the #1 person in the Heaven Saint Palace? Xia Chang Tian and the rest were filled with wishful thinking. Facing Jun Moxie's brazen attack, Xia Chang Tian and the rest naturally did not feel the slightest bit of fear or cowardice. Just as they were about to retaliate, they were suddenly engulfed by a strange fire. The countless fire dragons that blotted out the sky and covered the earth had instantly blocked everyone's line of sight, blocking everything within this strange fire. This fire came too suddenly. Instantaneous movement, instantaneous fire dragon attack to complete the interference of the enemy's line of sight. This kind of attack seemed to be the first time in the history of this world. However, the effect was obvious. The people stationed at the heaven-seizing army were all experts in the world. Their battle experience could be said to be unparalleled. Although they were facing such a shocking change, they were still able to remain calm. As a matter of fact, the appearance of this spark was only a little unexpected, but it really couldn't do anything to them. However, the instant of shock when it appeared was unavoidable. Following that, just as everyone's thoughts changed and they wanted to circulate their Xian Qi to control the fire, they didn't even have the time to react. The ground beneath their feet seemed to have turned into an abyss in an instant, and they were all caught off guard as they fell into the abyss. One could not help but admit that the mental fortitude of these people was truly shocking. More than half of them actually managed to stabilize their mental fortitude, and with a schwa sound, they gathered their Xian Qi to find the right direction and escape. However, right at this moment, there was a sudden explosion above his head with a loud rumble. Countless majestic water pillars poured down with the momentum of 100 rivers converging, and the momentum was vast and surging. It was as if the Milky Way had suddenly opened up a gap, and the water pillars were several tens of meters thick, and they came smashing down from above. Every single one of these streams of water had the force of 1,000 caddies. It was unstoppable. The area of this huge pit was extremely large. Although these people were all peak experts with rich experience in facing enemies, after this sudden change, even though their minds were not in a mess, they did not have the time to escape in time. Suddenly, they were hit by the water pillar that fell from the void. With a bang, they fell down solidly. For a moment, everyone felt as if they had encountered a nightmare. No matter how strong their mental fortitude was, they were still terrified. They only felt that everything that was happening around them was too strange, too unimaginable, and it was not something that could happen in this world. Everything was so unreal that it was no different from a nightmare. The place where they were standing was clearly a thick piece of flat ground. Where did the inexplicable fire come from? If there was a fire, there should be something to ignite it, right? But there was clearly not a single thing that could ignite the fire here. If it was an illusion, what a joke. How could there be such a real illusion in this world? The feeling of being burned by the fire was completely real. As for the water, the clouds in the sky were still rushing quickly. Under the crazy sweeping of the level 9 hurricane, they ran faster than any peerless expert, so how could it suddenly rain at this moment? But if it was not raining, then where did the water come from? Besides, even if it was really raining, it shouldn't be so heavy and so dense. With a boom, under the impact of the torrent, all the experts from the camp for the war for seizing the heavens were smashed into a large pit. There were a total of 47 peak experts from the camp for the war for seizing the heavens. Apart from the 2 Saint Monarchs, 3 Saint Venerables, and 2 Level 4 Holy Emperor, the rest had all fallen. It was not that the stronger the person, the stronger their ability to resist the sudden change. In truth, all those who were lucky enough to survive were people with excellent mental fortitude and were able to remain calm in the face of danger. With a sudden change, the moment one's mental fortitude was disturbed, one's ability to deal with it would naturally be greatly reduced. There was no lack of super experts among the 40 people who fell, including 2 Saint Venerable experts who had already reached the level of Saint Venerable. They were also caught off guard and fell into the pit. The surging water continued to pour into the pit, and what was even more inconceivable was that at the bottom of the pit, over 100 fountains as thick as the mouth of a well had suddenly appeared. With a loud boom, the entire pit was as lively as a hurricane in the ocean. That sound was deafening. Every single expert from the camp for the war for seizing the heavens was a veteran who had experienced hundreds of battles. What kind of situation had they not seen before? Although they had been caught off guard and had fallen into a dangerous situation, it did not mean that they would just sit there and wait for death. Each of them used their own methods and tried to break out of this predicament. Some of them directly rushed upwards, but the water was boundless, and no matter how powerful they were, it was impossible for them to break through. Some of them rushed to the walls of the pit and used their martial arts to attack, trying to create a large pit or directly punch a path out of the ground. But after doing this for a while, they discovered in despair that even if they used all their strength, they could only punch a depth of half a zhang. The hardness of the walls of the pit was actually 30% harder than steel. This was clearly an ordinary ground before. Why did it suddenly change? There were also some experts who sat down cross-legged. They treated everything in front of them as an illusion created by Jun Moxie, an illusory thing like a demon in one's heart. Against illusions, as long as one's mind was clear and one ignored it, no matter how real it was, it would naturally dissipate when it reached its limit. It had to be said that this method was indeed the best to deal with illusions and demons in one's heart. One could not help but praise these experts for their superb mental fortitude. But when their bodies were covered in blisters, and their clothes and hair were all burned away, they finally discovered this was not an illusion. This was all real, a fire that could really burn people to death. After falling down and struggling for a while, everyone discovered that the water was not small, and the fire was not small either. But to them, it could only cause a moment of trouble, and it was still far from being fatal. The water was indeed deep, but it was not enough to drown so many experts. As long as they used the turtle breathing technique, with the attainments of these people, cutting off their breathing for half a day, or even half a month, was not a big deal. Fire could indeed burn people to death, but this person would only be an ordinary person. To these peak experts, there was not much meaning. At most, their clothes, pants, hair, eyebrows, body hair, all the hair would be burnt, but it would not be able to cause any further harm. After a while, the people who had fallen down all surfaced from the surface of the water. And it was still the same people, not a single one missing. All that was left was the problem of how to go up. No matter how high and big the pit was, could it really stop so many Saint Venerables and the Holy Emperor? That would be a real joke. Therefore, the experts at the camp for the war for seizing the heavens all calmed down. But at this moment, someone suddenly shouted, "This water! Why did the water suddenly turn cold?" Everyone felt a chill in their hearts. Indeed, they could feel that the temperature of the water was dropping at a shocking speed. A moment ago, it was still like a normal river, but now, it had already become bone-chilling cold. The next moment, there was no next moment. The crowd didn't even have the time to react. They didn't even know what was happening, but suddenly, a series of cracking noise could be heard. Within a couple of seconds, such a deep and wide water level was turned into ice. It had actually frozen everyone within. However, the change wasn't over yet. The temperature was still dropping, and the ice was still letting out a series of cracking noise, turning harder and harder. At a lightning speed, the ice was actually turning into ice. And this momentum was actually getting faster and faster, as if there was no end to it. Xian ice was a high-grade material that would not even melt under the scorching sun. In terms of toughness, it was even stronger than steel. Anyone who had studied physics knew that when water turned into ice, because of the density, the volume would increase slightly. If the volume was small, this change would not be too obvious. But with the volume of the pit, this sudden change would increase the volume by quite a bit. And this sudden change brought about a strong pressure that could be said to be extremely shocking. The experts at the camp for the war for seizing the heavens all gritted their teeth and gathered all their strength. trying their best to resist this terrifying pressure that they had never experienced before. It was not that they could not use their Xian Qi to break out of the ice, but the problem was, if one of them broke out of the ice first, then their old brothers who were not too far away from them would definitely be affected by the explosion. Serious injuries were unavoidable. This time, everyone finally began to panic, because it was impossible for everyone to break out at the same time. Once they broke out, there would definitely be sacrifices, and it was possible that one of them would be injured or even more. They were all old brothers who had accompanied each other for hundreds and thousands of years. How could they let their brothers get injured for the sake of their own lives? Chapter 1161. Today's second update. Continuing to work hard. What should we do? Everyone looked at each other in dismay. Their gazes were saying the same thing, the same 3 words. Amongst the experts in the camp for the war for seizing the heavens, the weakest had already reached the saint realm. There were even some saint venerables amongst them. But now, they were trapped in the ice, unable to move and unable to do anything. If such an encounter were to be spread out, it would definitely be a huge joke. But this joke in the eyes of the world was an iron-like fact, and no one could doubt it. In the short period of time that they were hesitating, the ice started to change once again. With a series of cracking sounds, it turned into a jade-like color with a speed visible to the naked eye. The appearance of this color meant that the ice was no longer solid ice, but Xian ice. These pieces of ice that had just been condensed by the water, in the time it took to snap a finger, completed the long process of transforming the ice of the snowy mountains into Xian ice, a process that would normally take tens of thousands of years. It was almost done in one step. But this change did not stop. Not only was the water changing, the walls of the pit were also changing, becoming harder and harder. It was actually compressing the huge piece of Xian ice from all directions, crazily compressing towards the center. As it was compressing, it actually continued to solidify. Such a terrifying and mystical change gradually appeared in the eyes of the people present. The profound being quickly formed, and the light it possessed became more and more dazzling, becoming more and more transparent, and its relative size also became smaller and smaller. In the end, the originally gigantic profound being seemed to have disappeared from the world, and looking down from above, one could clearly see 40 people floating in midair without any hindrance. Water, ice, Xian ice, everything seemed to have disappeared. However, everyone clearly understood and felt that the layer of ice had simply disappeared. It had merely transformed into something else. Everyone had only heard of it in legends, but had never seen it with their own eyes. Essence of ice. Essence of ice could be said to be the ultimate essence of ice. Even an ancient ice mountain that had existed for tens of thousands of years might not be able to produce a piece of essence of ice the size of a human head. But right now, Jun Moxie had created a piece of essence of ice that was at least a few hundred zhang wide in the blink of an eye. Such a method could truly be said to have stolen the fortune of the heavens. The essence of ice, a priceless treasure. If a fist-sized chunk of essence of ice could be fused with steel and forged by a renowned weaponsmith, the weapon forged would definitely be invincible. It would truly be a godly weapon that could slice through steel like mud. Even if an ordinary person who didn't know any Xian Qi held it, they would be able to cut steel that had been tempered 100 times like tofu. If it was a complete sword made of essence of ice, its power would be even more shocking. As soon as the sword was unsheathed, the sky and earth froze, and frost flew for 100 miles. But in front of them, countless people yearned for it, countless people were intoxicated. Such a huge divine ice pith had appeared in front of everyone. Was this a beautiful dream? Or a nightmare? With the appearance of the essence of ice, the transformation finally came to an end. Regardless of what it meant to others, to the people who were frozen in the essence of ice, this divine object that they had once yearned for even in their dreams was nothing but a nightmare, an unspeakable misery. Everyone inside could not move at all. This was the legendary essence ice. It could be said that the essence ice was sharper than any divine weapon in the world. As long as any one of them moved, the other 39 people would immediately suffer the pain of being pierced by 10,000 swords. Even with the strength of their bodies, they would not be able to withstand the attack of 10,000 swords. If they were trapped in an open space and were trapped in this essence of ice, these 40 people could try to exert their strength at the same time, explode together, and fly out at the same time. Although this required a rather precise grasp, it was not a big problem for these experts. In fact, they might not be able to avoid some casualties, but most of them would still be able to escape unscathed. But the real problem now was that this huge essence of ice was placed in a huge pit, and it was perfectly embedded in it. And the walls of the pit around it were even harder than the essence of ice. If 40 people tried to explode at the same time, then the only chance of success would be to shake the essence of ice, the walls, and even the ground. Only then would they be able to truly escape. Although everyone here was an expert, they did not have the confidence to do so. And if they failed, it meant that each of the 40 people would have to bear the combined attack of the other 39 people. The result was very simple, and there was no second result. All 40 of them would turn into 40 lumps of bloody flesh at the same time. No one was an exception. And under such extreme cold, even a Saint Venerable's holy infant might not be able to escape. Right now, the only thing they could do was to wait for reinforcements. Because there was no other way. They could only wait for Xia Chang Tian and Ji Bo Wen to emerge victorious, and then think of a way to save them from the outside. After all, no one would die in a short period of time. Although they could not leave for the time being, as long as they did not make any rash moves, it was not a problem for them to hold out for 10 days to half a month. With Xia Chang Tian and Ji Bo Wen's Saint Monarch level strength, they would definitely be able to defeat Jun Moxie and Tian Fa's Xian beasts easily. At that time, whether it was destroying the mountain or forcing Jun Moxie to melt the Xian ice, they would definitely be able to save everyone. Thinking up to here, everyone who had confidence in Xia Chang Tian and the rest all heaved a sigh of relief. But what they did not know was that this was merely the appetizer that Jun Moxie had prepared. The killing move that Jun Moxie had arranged was still lingering in the air. It had only descended at this moment. The flame of primal chaos. Only the flame of primal chaos was truly fatal. Although the Xian ice and essence of ice were powerful, they only had one use. And that was to prevent them from moving. The flame of primal chaos in the sky did not cover a very large area. It only covered a radius of 1,000 feet. It floated leisurely down from the sky at an extremely slow speed. With this kind of attack range, this kind of attack speed, any venerable and above experts would be able to dodge it easily. The threat was very limited. If it could not hit its target, everything would be for naught. But in this situation where everyone could not move, it was a different matter. As long as the attack range of the flame of primal chaos was larger than the Xian ice, it would be sufficient. It was enough to make one unable to reincarnate. When the flame of primal chaos descended, there was truly no blind spot. In truth, this 100 zhang radius of the flame of primal chaos was already Jun Moxie's full strength. No, this was the full strength of the Hongjun Pagoda that he could currently use. Xia Chang Tian and Ji Bo Wen, these two Saint Venerables, could be said to be seething with anger because of Jun Moxie. Just as they were about to make a move, they were surprised to see a sky full of flames, followed by a torrential flood. Following that, with a loud bang, everything changed, completely out of their control. First, the thick ground beneath their feet suddenly turned into a bottomless pit. 8 or 9 out of 10 of his brothers had fallen into the water. The 2 of them had the highest cultivation. Even if their feet were in the air, they could still maintain their footing, as though they were walking on flat ground. Although the other 3 Saint Venerables and 2 Holy Emperors did not have this kind of cultivation, because of their strong wills, they did not panic in the face of danger. Borrowing strength from each other, they managed to escape 100 zhang away in an instant. By the time they managed to stabilize themselves, the water above them was boundless, and there was no deep pit at all. If they had not escaped in time, even if they had not fallen, they would have been washed down by the water. With such a sudden change, 40 people had already disappeared from their original positions. Jun Moxie, what the hell are you doing? Xia Chang Tian stood in the air and cursed in a flustered and exasperated manner, to actually use such underhanded methods to scheme against others. Someone as shameless as you, how can you be called an overlord? Overlord? I've never thought of becoming an overlord. Jun Moxie's voice drifted over. Xia Changtian, the only thing I want right now is for you to seek justice for me. Let my brothers rest in peace in the netherworld, that's all. Xia Changtian did not hesitate to lower his status to scold Jun Moxie, hoping that he would be able to capture him in one fell swoop. This brat was too slippery, actually using his concealment technique at the start of the battle. How could he fight when he could not even see? Although Xia Changtian's cultivation was high, he was not Xiaoing after all. He did not have the all-seeing eye and was unable to see through the concealment technique. In fact, Jun Dashao's cultivation had improved again recently, and even if Xiaoing was here, she might not be able to see through his yin-yang escape technique. Right now, Jun Moxie had spoken as he wished. But his voice was extremely faint. Even with the cultivation of Saint Monarchs like Xia Changtian and Ji Bowen, they were unable to see where he was hiding. In fact, they could not even tell which direction he was hiding in. This was truly strange. In the sky, the dense cluster of black flames descended gracefully. Xia Changtian did not pay much attention to these paper ashes. He continued to look around warily, trying his best to find traces of Jun Moxie, hoping that he could kill him in a single strike. Jun Dashao was not only in the illusory state of the yin-yang escape technique, his entire body had entered the Hongjun Pagoda, and only his head could be seen. Of course, Xia Changtian would not be able to find him. However, Jun Dashao's current state was also extremely miserable, and he was unable to bear the burden. This was the first time he had unleashed all his energy to the limit. Just the power of the 5 elements had already caused his spiritual energy to fall into a state where he could not hold on any longer. With no other choice, he had fused his mental energy with the Hongjun Pagoda, using the energy of the Hongjun Pagoda to turn water into ice, then into Xian ice, and finally into essence of ice. Following that was the flame of primal chaos, scattering out in all directions. But even after fusing with the Hongjun Pagoda, he could only scatter this much flame of primal chaos. Any more, and Jun Moxie would not be able to bear it. Even if Jun Moxie wanted to, the Hongjun Pagoda would stop him. Because with Jun Moxie's current strength, he could only unleash this much of the Hongjun Pagoda's power. Any more and he would only suffer a backlash. The result of that backlash would only be the destruction of his soul. But for now, this was enough. Very enough. Jun Moxie's face was pale, and blood was dripping from the corner of his mouth. Leng looked at the huge pit on the ground mercilessly. Is this unbearable? The real unbearable thing was yet to come. Chapter 1162. Today's third night. Chapter 14. Fuck, everyone must be getting impatient. It's already 2 p.m. Right at this time, Ji Bowen suddenly roared out, Jun Moxie, come out. Come out for this daddy. If you're a man, then scram out for this daddy. You cowardly bastard who only knows how to use underhanded methods. As a Saint Monarch, when had Ji Bowen ever lost his composure like this before? But right now, he could not endure it no matter what. When he'd lowered his head earlier, he discovered something strange about the crater. Originally, he and Xia Changtian had the same thought. No matter what tricks you have, you won't be able to threaten us. Even the weakest among us is at the Saint Realm. How could we be burned to death by a single flame? That would be the biggest joke in the world. Even if you can bring out more water, so what? At most, you'll be able to suppress it for a while. No one will die no matter what. Can you maintain it for such a long time? As long as the water slows down, everyone will be able to jump out immediately. At that time, your strength will not be affected at all. With just you, Jun Moxie, no matter how strong you are, can you deal with all 47 of us at the same time? Not to mention a mere Jun Moxie, even if it was Gu Han, Gouda, he would not be able to do it. But in that instant when he'd lowered his head, he'd discovered that the water had clearly stopped, but not a single one of them had come out. Then, when he took a closer look, he was truly shocked. Black ice. It was actually black ice. How could there be black ice in this place? One had to know that more than half of the volcanoes were still erupting, and the temperature was so hot that it could roast people. But black ice had actually appeared here? Ji-bo-wen could not believe his own eyes. When he regained his composure and looked again, he couldn't help but exclaim in shock. In the blink of an eye, the black ice had turned into essence of ice. Faced with such an unimaginable miracle, Ji-bo-wen only had a single thought: it's over. The 40 people below could basically be declared finished. Unless Jun Moxie changed his mind and let them out, otherwise, only a few of them would be able to survive. Being enveloped within the essence of ice, the degree of danger had already reached a place where only a slim chance of survival was left. Being trapped together with their brothers, none of them dared to move. They couldn't even move a muscle. Any reckless move would implicate his brothers and comrades. At this moment, the essence of ice was in a complete state, so there was no danger for the time being. However, as long as there was the slightest reckless movement or the interference of an external force that caused the essence of ice to shatter, it would be equivalent to countless sharp swords that could slice through iron like mud, launching indiscriminate attacks from all directions. When everyone used their profound energy to protect themselves, they might be able to shatter a portion of the ice pith, but it was absolutely impossible for them to completely shatter it. Moreover, the shattered essence ice wouldn't disappear after shattering. Instead, it would transform into smaller, sharper weapons, and its destructive power wouldn't necessarily decrease by much. Xia Changtian and Ji-bo-wen's faces finally paled. They finally understood Jun Moxie's sinister intentions. And they had also thoroughly understood how vicious Jun Mo-sie's so-called revenge was. There were still ripples in the air, and Jun Moxie still didn't give any response. But at this time, the flame of primal chaos had already descended. Although it was descending slowly, it was still descending. In truth, this slow descent was the most torturous torture. It was far more terrifying than being sliced into two. At this time, Xia Changtian felt that something was wrong. Something was wrong from the bottom of his heart. The black flame of primal chaos that was only a few feet above his head actually gave him an indescribable feeling of death. As a Saint Monarch expert, it had been a long time since he had experienced such a feeling of being on the brink of life and death. With a clang, his sword was unsheathed. Xia Changtian raised his sword and infused it with his strongest and most vigorous Xian Qi before spitting it out fiercely. A sword light that was 30 feet long pierced through the air and struck the flame of primal chaos. The flame of primal chaos in the air actually maintained its original descending speed and continued to descend. Such a tyrannical sword Qi, even if it struck the void, it would still cause a series of ripples and cracks in the air. But right now, it had clearly struck the flame of primal chaos, but the flame of primal chaos was completely unaffected. Even the speed at which it was descending did not change at all. Xia Changtian's pupils constricted as his hair stood on end. Just what in the world was this thing? This sword of his, even if the target was a small mountain, even if it couldn't split it into two, it should at least be able to slice off a portion of the mountain. But that strange black flame of primal chaos actually didn't even have any reaction when facing this attack? This was too sinister, right? The flame of primal chaos continued to approach, closer and closer. Xia Changtian gritted his teeth and the sword in his hand slashed out once more, slowly coming into contact with the black flame of primal chaos. A clear and melodious cry of a sword suddenly resounded in the sky. If one listened carefully, it was not difficult to detect that the sword cry was actually mixed with a thick sense of mockery. Only the blood of yellow flame would be able to produce such a human-like sound. This lord danced in the air, appearing extremely lively. As for the meaning of this sword cry, it was very simple. Idiot, didn't you see that the moment that flame of primal chaos appeared, even this lord had to avoid it? You actually used your sword to come into contact with it. You really don't know what's good for you. This lord will mourn for your sword. Xia Changtian's sword came into contact with the flame of primal chaos without the slightest bit of resistance. Xia Changtian heaved a sigh of relief and increased his Xian Qi, intending to send the ball of flame of primal chaos flying. But under this wave, The flame of primal chaos was still calmly adhering to his sword, burning slowly. It was still as unhurried as before, without any change at all. The real change was in the sword. That sword, Xia Changtian's hair stood on end, and he almost spat out a mouthful of blood. That sword of his, that sword that had accompanied him for close to 4,000 years, had actually become shorter. What's going on? Why did it suddenly become shorter? Amidst his shock, the flame of primal chaos continued to burn gracefully, following the body of the sword and burning towards it. Everywhere it passed, there was still no change. There was no smoke, no signs of burning, nothing at all. The only change was that the 3-chi-long sword was now missing by half. So it did not disappear into thin air, but it had been burnt. With just a single touch, half of the sword was gone. What the hell is this thing? Xia Changtian's soul almost left his body, and his entire body was drenched in cold sweat. In a moment of shock, he realized that the strange flame was about to reach the hilt of the sword. His hands trembled, and he hurriedly threw the last piece of the sword to the ground. Ji Bo-wen, who was by the side, had also used the same method to try and stop the descent of the flame of primal chaos. Naturally, he also met with the same fate. The sword that had accompanied him for so many years had been burnt to ashes in an instant. The two of them exchanged a look, and both of them could see the fear in each other's eyes. The two of them had been stationed in the war for seizing the heavens for over 3,000 years. Their ages were similar, and their cultivations were similar. Even when they were facing countless strange races, there was not a single word of fear in their hearts. But at this moment, the two of them were actually filled with fear. The flame of primal chaos did not matter if you were afraid or not. Right now, it was already right above your head. The two of them cried out loudly and suddenly sprinted away, sticking close to the ground. At this moment, the two of them did not hold back at all, unleashing the maximum strength that a Saint Monarch could muster. With the fastest speed in their lives, they traversed over 100 zhang in the blink of an eye, landing outside of the attack range of the flame of primal chaos. Looking at the flames falling down at a steady speed, completely covering the hole with a circumference of 1,000 feet, the two of them had ashen faces. This was because they had already confirmed one thing, and that was that the 40 brothers below were truly in danger this time. Even the two of them were helpless against this thing, let alone the others. This thing is called the flame of primal chaos. The two of you have probably never seen it before, right? Jun Moxie's voice drifted over, as if he was very tired. There were even a few faint coughs in his voice. Cough, cough, the flame of primal chaos. This thing is a little different from ordinary flames in terms of attributes. It does not fear the 5 elements, nor is it restrained by them. Because it is born, it burns when it comes into contact with water. It burns when it comes into contact with wood. It burns when it comes into contact with metal. In short, in this world, there is nothing that the flame of primal chaos cannot burn. And the saying that there is nothing that it cannot burn naturally includes the human body. Even things like Xian Qi and souls are no exception. This should be considered rather accurate. Because I really have not found anything in this world that the flame of primal chaos cannot burn. Jun Moxie explained patiently and carefully. The moment this sentence was said, the remaining 7 experts on the outside all revealed expressions of shock and despair. Looking at the huge pit, their faces were filled with grief and indignation. Gu Han, Mo Wudao, and the rest who were watching the battle from afar also let out a sorrowful sigh. Everyone's eyes were staring blankly, and their faces were pale. Jun Moxie, where are you, bastard? Come out. Come out for me. Hurry up and come out for me. Xia Changtian roared angrily. That arrogant demeanor of a Saint Monarch had long disappeared. All that was left on his face was fear and panic. Jun Moxie, hurry up and retract that damnable flame. Let my brothers out. Xia Changtian and Ji Bo-wen cried out at the same time. Their voices were filled with panic. At this moment, the two of them could be said to have their hearts fried. Of the people below, the ones who had known each other for the shortest amount of time had at least been together for a few hundred years. Among them, there were many who had been with the two of them for 1,000 years and fought side by side for 2,000 years. Seeing that they had fallen into such a predicament where death was certain, the two of them felt as though their hearts were being torn apart. Even their souls were trembling from the pain. Isn't it very painful? He could only watch helplessly as his brothers, whom he had stayed by his side for thousands of years, fell into a desperate situation. He could only watch helplessly as they stepped onto the path of death, but he was completely powerless and could only watch from the sidelines. Wasn't this feeling very good? Isn't it very satisfying? You're tuning in to the Passion Pages YouTube channel. We're so grateful for your support, and don't forget to subscribe to join us on this incredible journey through captivating stories. Your generosity through donations truly makes a world of difference, as it's the primary source of revenue that allows me to expand and enhance this channel for you. Thank you from the bottom of my heart for being a part of this adventure.